one of these days, I keep saying it, maybe it'll happen. One of these days, I will figure out how to get a stream starting soon thing set up.
Oh, yeah.
But it is not this day.
I would not be any help with that at the moment.
Yeah, because we use like two different streaming programs. I use Streamlabs, and you got OBS over there, right?
Yeah, and I'm also, like, I haven't dipped my feet into any of the external peripherals or effects or anything like that. My streams are very bare bones.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Now, playing this on Steam Deck is a little bit weird because I can't get my controller to work with War for Cybertron because it's the PC version, which runs off of mouse and keyboard. However, the Steam Deck does have built-in mouse and keyboard functionality, but because it does that, my my controllers don't do the same. If that makes sense, it's like you have to drag the mouse with the right joystick, and then there's other button placements for like melee attacks that I can't map to a conventional controller unless I get like one of the big fancy Xbox like whatever's that's got like all the back paddles. And
the like pro controllers.
Yeah, like Super Pro, Extreme 3000, Extra Cheese, whatever. I can't afford that at the moment, so just gonna run it off the deck while looking at the screen. All right, so you want how do you want to structure this comparison of the Bayverse films and just talking about them? Well, you said you want to go in order, which makes the most sense. So how do we want to start this?
I guess we'll just take turns on giving a quick summary of what we think of each movie.
Right.
Are we live now?
Oh yeah, we're live over here.
Okay. All right. So good morning, everybody. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to join us this morning. We are going to have a very exciting discussion today. I know we've been sitting on this, brewing on this for weeks. This arduous journey of rewatching these, in some cases excellent, in some cases awful films, and I think we both agree that TF-86 is a classic. We don't really have to go into that too much. You've done an entire review of TF-86 on your channel.
Oh yeah,
a couple years ago. But
and now that I've actually dipped my toes into a little bit more Transformers lore outside of just the movie and a few scant G1 episodes, I actually have an even greater appreciation for it because I can understand some of the context around the film now, and I can see how, one thing that always kind of confused me was, yes, Optimus Prime got killed off, but why was that such a heavy blow? And now after watching some of the other episodes from G1, like Divide and Conquer especially, now I can see why people were just so devastated back then that the seemingly invincible leader is now just dead, just like that, when he went through worse and survived. Divide and Conquer is a fantastic episode. I just think it happened a little bit too early, but that probably actually led to why everyone was so devastated at the movie. But that's its own topic right there. But yes, I am a lifelong enjoyer of Transformers 1986.
Yeah. But unfortunately, Transformers as a brand is a brand that kind of lives and dies off of nostalgia.
Oh yeah,
and is a little bit too codependent on nostalgia in recent years. Some people have pointed out, and so the Bayverse, for all of its flaws, was at least something different. It was radically different than what we had seen before, but it did. It did try to reference G1 and sometimes other continuities as well, as often as it could, to give some kind of aesthetic symmetry to the rest of the franchise. Before we go any further, let me make sure I share around the link to the stream.
Yes. Yeah, I absolutely agree about them taking more influence besides just G1, because characters like Sentinel Prime and the Fallen, I believe those are from some certain comics that I haven't read yet, but I definitely know they were not.
Fallen is a really niche comic character,
and they were not at all in the cartoon series or movies. I can absolutely say that with 100% certainty. Or at least, it was retconned later that one background character we saw was actually Sentinel Prime, but he didn't have a speaking role, a leadership role, so.
Or you're streaming on YouTube, not Twitch, right?
Correct, yes. That's another thing. I might figure out how to multi-platform one day, but not today.
Oh, I love political ads. They're so good. My favorite form of entertainment.
No comment. It's one of those things up to where, up to a certain point, stupid is funny, but after a certain point, it just becomes stupid, and it's no longer funny.
Yeah. Okay. All right, give me just a second to get this link shared around, and then we should be good to talk about first movie here.
Yes. Even if I can't say everything that I have in my notes for the live action films, I definitely have enough material to make like full video retrospectives on each of the movies as we go in later, just because there's a lot that I have to say about, well, a lot. Everything from actual glaring problems with the film structure and the characters being what they are to just nitpicks that kind of unravel things. And it's one of those things up to where suspension of disbelief does exist, but it only exists as long as the audience wills it to. And the worse a product is, the less you allow the suspension of disbelief to exist. It's like if you're enjoying yourself, then you're willing to suspend disbelief a little bit further. But if you're not, then you're going to point out everything that's wrong. At least that's typically the way that I find myself experiencing things. Really wish I could figure out how to remap my War for Cybertron controls to be more like Halo. I'm sure it's possible, I just haven't figured it out yet. Because the game plays on Steam Deck, but it was not optimized for it because, as you know, the game was delisted. I'm pretty sure back before the Steam Deck even became a thing. So all the controls are listed as this key on the keyboard and not what button it is on the Steam Deck. So it's kind of hard to see what is what. Even after playing through the same level like 3 separate times, I still find the Magma Frag Launcher to be utterly useless. It's probably a skill issue, but I'm not good with it.
Oh, I think it's quite good, but it is only good at pretty short range. The thing is just getting used to manually detonating the projectile.
Yeah, is it the reload? Yeah, the reload button. There it is. Yeah, I only ever found it on the first stage, and I'm doing my third playthrough now. I went through first as Barricade, second time as Megatron, and now I'm playing as Brawl, and I just never was able to make good use of this gun because of where you spawn with it. It is up on a cliff or up on a hill, yeah, like an overlook thing, and the shot doesn't really go over the ledge unless you angle it and arc it. So it's like I try to shoot and it gets stuck on the railing and blows up in my face. But I can see how it would be kind of like the grenade launcher from Halo Reach, which I actually was halfway decent with that thing at one point. Probably not anymore now, but back in the day. How are you?
Yeah, I actually think it's a really solid weapon, but it is kind of one of those things where you kind of have to be right up in the enemy's face and rely on the splash damage.
Oh, yeah.
But the splash damage is really strong. Like I said, you just have to time the manually detonating the projectile. And I don't know what your alt fire button is on that on your control scheme, because that seems to be your biggest problem with playing on Steam Deck.
Yeah, it's like the regular fire button is of course the trigger, right trigger. left trigger is zoom. My abilities are push in the joysticks. When I'm in vehicle mode, left trigger is the booster. And because the Steam Deck does have like the extra paddles, like that fancy Xbox controller I was talking about, my right ring finger is melee, and or left ring finger is melee, and left middle finger is also transform. Y is also transform, and X, I think X is throw grenade, and I switch grenades using the D-pad.
Yeah, that's pretty close to the console control scheme. It's not too far off.
Just a couple extra
The
buttons
thing that might
because
throw you off of. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's just a couple extra buttons because the 360 controller didn't have these little back paddles.
Yeah, I think transforming by pushing in one of the analog sticks might be the awkward part for you, but you get used to it.
Yeah. All right, so you got the link shared around?
Yeah, so we should be good to go.
All right.
All right, so I guess we begin with Transformers, directed by Michael Bay in 2007, the first live action movie.
Indeed.
And you want me to go ahead and share my thoughts on this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I remember I talked about this a little bit in my video on the video game based on the first movie, where I remember seeing the trailer for this movie before it came out and thinking, oh, this is like Independence Day. It's like an alien invasion over the top action movie, but there's aliens on the side of the good guys. And it wasn't until I don't know what like didn't click with me like while watching it, but I didn't realize until they showed like the title card of the movie that it was a Transformers movie. And at that time, my only experience with Transformers was Armada. I watched Armada when it was on TV and enjoyed it quite a bit, but didn't really couldn't watch Energon. Like I just wasn't able to watch it when it was on TV, and so I kind of lost interest. But then when the 2007 movie came out, it definitely like reignited my interest and is probably responsible for me being a Transformers fan to this day. And that movie, while there are a lot of people that still don't like that one, and that one does have a lot of the same flaws that the later ones would have. It was sort of the canary in the coal mine with some of the flaws that the series itself would later have. But it is like the most innocent of the live action ones for a while in terms of like, the insensitivity of it is not super over the top yet. The stereotypes are not super over the top yet. The crude humor is not super over the top yet. It's there, but it's more palatable. And then, like I said, something that I realized, rewatching it for that video, that I failed to appreciate watching it when I was like a teenager, is all of and I guess it comes with a change in like values and political beliefs and stuff like that as an adult, where it's like you feel very differently about like the post 9/11 jingoism of those movies after a decade and a half of hindsight. It doesn't really feel quite as tasteful anymore. But back in the day, man, let me tell you, like
America,
yeah, there is just something. I mean, at the end of the day, as like sleazy as it is, like there is something really cool about it. Like the opening scene where Blackout lands at the base in Qatar and transforms, and like I just remember how like cool his like shockwave attack was when it like shatters the glass on the base windows, and I'm like, this is insane. This is crazy. And and then later they're fighting a Scorponok in the desert, and the actors that play like the soldiers, they're all pretty likable. They're all pretty cool guys. And there is some like if it's 2007 and your go-to games are your Halo 3 and your Call of Duty 4, and they're like bring in the A-10 Warthog, bring in the AC-130 gunship, you're like, okay, this is pretty cool. I'm here for this. But so like that element of that spectacle was fine for that movie, but it gets really out of hand as the series goes on, and we'll talk about that.
Yes.
Um, and then again, story structure, I thought it was fine. This is the point in time where Shia LaBeouf's character is the most likable, relatively speaking, and the he was a relatable protagonist for the like young male audience for this movie. He's fresh off the Disney Channel. He was pretty much the perfect age to play the role. He was a very average guy, like nothing too crazy there. There are some huge problems with Shia LaBeouf as the series goes on, and Shia LaBeouf, the actor, I feel like, I'm not sure how familiar you are with his descent into what he is now, but I actually feel, as much as he kind of turned into an awful person, I actually feel really bad about what happened to him, because there's an argument to be made that like child stars in Hollywood are not treated well, and that a lot of the mental health problems and substance abuse and things like that they suffer from are things that the industry deserves a lot of criticism for. So I don't think Shia LaBeouf is entirely blameless, but I do think that maybe being the star of one of the highest grossing movie franchises of its decade had some negative consequences on his mental health.
That's one that I can't speak to because I know nothing about it. Most of the time, I don't really follow what like actors do outside the movies, as long as they're here for a good performance. But that's a different conversation altogether, whether or not it was actually a good performance by Shia LaBeouf or not. I will say he definitely does play the like awkward guy like very well, and actually that the scenes where he was being awkward goofball, that actually did get some good laughs out of me, like good genuine laughs even today. Like rewatching the first and second movie. Third one not as much because there was like next to none of that charming awkward. It was just forced awkward.
He's so bad in Dark of the Moon.
Yeah, like
he's unbelievable. We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Oh my god. I am more able to defend Shia LaBeouf in the context of this first movie than I am later on. I think he was, in terms of casting, he was the right call. He was a good, not too dissimilar of a character archetype from other humans in other Transformers animated series. So, I think if they were looking at G1 as the template, like you have
Daniel, like I would say Daniel is closer to Sam than Spike is, at least based on what I've recently watched.
And then like literally it's still the Witwickies, like it's still like a deliberate reference.
Yeah.
But my I made the same criticism in my video about because I had a brief summary about this movie in that review of the first movie game.
Yes.
Where not to ape too much from Dan Olson's video about ludonarrative dissonance, but he was talking about an example of when a movie's storytelling does not agree with the message the camera is showing you.
Yes.
And the example he gave is Michaela. So the thing about Megan Fox's character in these movies is that really you could rewrite and reshoot this movie to where she is the protagonist, because she has she comes from kind of a like lower middle class, like working class background, whereas Sam is spoiled, and we'll get there.
Yeah, like I have like a fat stack of notes, especially when it comes to Revenge of the Fallen. That one, like there's so much, like exactly what you said. The camera is showing us one thing, narratively we're being told another.
Yeah,
there's things that just don't work, and it's like you're telling me one thing but showing me another. You're deliberately lying to me, and I don't like that in filmmaking.
Yeah, so specifically, like Michaela is a mechanic.
Yes.
She comes from a little bit more of a underprivileged background. She has maybe
she does have a juvenile record. Her dad was in jail for Grand Theft Auto because he couldn't make ends meet.
Yep. And so that gives us the opportunity to have some empathy
And
for her situation.
if she had been the
And
protag in this case, if she had ended up with Bumblebee, then it honestly could have been kind of like what we got with Rise of the Beasts, where the main character, I can't remember his name, like it could have been a thing of
Noah Diaz.
tried to steal the car, and then you get roped into the Autobots, but she actually would have been worth something because she's a mechanic, and she would have had something of a redemption arc because she does have a criminal past, and this could have been her trying to make something of herself, doing good instead of stealing.
She is in personality wise like more courageous, more take charge, um, and more like let's get shit done kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But she like as a character has so much more in common with the Transformers just by virtue of being a mechanic, but the camera wants to treat her like a piece of meat.
Yes, like
And so
there. I keep jumping around, but like one specific camera shot that just bothers me to no end is at the very beginning of Revenge of the Fallen when she is like airbrushing the paint on the motorcycle.
yeah.
She's just leaned over it in just the right pose, and I'm like, yeah, like you're playing up for the camera over here, and I don't want to make excuse me. I don't want to make any accusations. I want to make that like blatantly clear up front. I'm not accusing anybody, but as a grown adult now in my 30s, I do find it a bit uncomfortable when Megan Fox was like in her like very early 20s. Like I think she was 21 during the first movie. Second movie was 2 years later, but the characters are like 17, 18 during these movies. Like Sam's going off to college, just finished high school in the second one, so they're like 18, 19 at the oldest. And Michael Bay, the director, is in his 40s. It's one of those things that's where I'm not going to make any kinds of accusations at all because I guess he knows what audience he's directing for, but I still find it a bit uncomfortable now, like as a grown adult.
If that makes you uncomfortable, just wait until we talk about the age of certain characters and Age of Extinction.
Oh dear. And like I said, I didn't get the chance to rewatch that one for our thing here, even though it was my idea. I tried, but life and work kept getting in the way. But I got the first three done, so I at least have a little to work with. And The Last Night is not worth watching a second time. So
For sure, yeah. In short, there, I would love to see
oh wait,
either just like a screenplay or a comic or something where they have rewritten this movie to where Sam Witwicky, Shia LaBeouf's character, does not exist, and Michaela was literally just the protagonist the entire time.
I just remembered you said Age of Extinction and the age thing. I just remembered that whole scene about the Romeo and Juliet law.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it.
Don't
worry.
The biggest thing with a lot of this is whether or not like that on its own, whatever. A lot of the stuff that happens in the movies. The biggest question I'm having with a lot of it is why is this necessary for this movie? Why is it necessary to take up screen time during a Transformers movie? When we're here to watch the giant robots blow the snot out of each other, why is all of this, like, necessary?
Oh, I'm glad you bring that up because we disagreed about this when it came to Rise of the Beast, and we'll get there as well. But like, your biggest criticism of the live action movies has always just been the fact that they are live action, and that you would prefer to have a just animated Transformers movie that features no humans, and we finally got that.
We did
this past weekend.
And
it was.
I will say I absolutely love Transformers One. I'm not going to say I would have preferred it to be 2D because I think it was great on its own, but you saw that 40th anniversary thing Studio Trigger gave us. If they were to give us either a movie or a series, that will make money. Like that will make all the money.
But what I was going to say is, in defense of the idea of making a live-action Transformers movie, I do think the idea has some appeal. Oh, hi, Jetfire.
Yeah. That's one thing I love about War for Cybertron. We actually get to see Jetfire team up with the aerial bots. That's something I always wanted to see, and we never got that in the cartoon.
Yeah, Troy Baker doing an Australian accent for some reason.
I feel like that was actually because Scott McNeil was the voice of Jetfire in Armada, and I believe he's Australian, isn't he?
Well,
he was actually doing a Brooklyn accent though, but
in Cybertron, Jetfire has an accent like that.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, anyway, I will say, having rewatched the movies, there is a certain appeal to the spectacle I can absolutely get behind. Some of the visuals are great, like the scene in Dark of the Moon where Sam is like thrown from Bumblebee during the highway chase. You see B have to transform mid-flight, knock things out of the way, grab him, and then transform back. I feel like that shot was actually 3D when it was in theaters. I'm 99% certain that was. So it looks a little bit awkward, but the spectacle is really cool.
Well,
So
what I was gonna say is not even from this from a perspective of the spectacle, but where I think that making these movies live action has some appeal is the idea of like if you think about the brand appeal of Transformers as a brand. So like if you
yes,
go all the way back to the original toy line and G1 and everything, the core like philosophy is kind of just like, okay, well, kids love toy cars.
yes,
Kids also love toy robots. Let's put them together. Great idea. But the sort of like mythos and the world building is like,
secondary.
oh, well, your family car could be your big robot best friend. And wouldn't it be cool if you were in a bad situation and your car just like transformed and fought the bad guys for you? And like that's a really compelling like narrative for kids and maybe even beyond that. Like even when you get to adulthood and everything, it's like you and many people I know share the same thing of like we all have a very sentimental attachment to your first car, and this is universal. This is like boys and girls.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody I know that has a car, like a lot of people I know like give their car a name. They put their goofy nerd stickers on it.
Literally every
There's
car I've ever owned has been named after Transformers.
and like one of my friends has her car named after the ship from Mass Effect and stuff like that. And it's like you owning a car and being able to drive on your own and go places as a young adult is this unbelievable sense of freedom and being able to do whatever you want whenever you want and go wherever you want. And it is a very powerful, compelling emotion for a young adult. And so, again, the idea that like, oh, this car that I love and I baby that has like a personality. What if it could talk back to me? You know,
Yeah.
what if it just stood up one day and it was a giant space robot and it was my robot best friend? So I think like from that angle, it's stuff like it is specifically the idea of the relationship between the humans and the Transformers that makes the idea of a live action series compelling because it's like it's the relationship between the two species.
Yeah,
And so
there's still this unfortunate is it stigma or stigmata? Unfortunate mindset that animation, even to this day, is still considered a more juvenile art form. It's still considered to be for a younger audience, even though we got things like Castlevania where we have like blood and gore and sex scenes and all that. But animation as a medium is still seen as for kids. So a lot of times
that's
live
a huge problem in film criticism.
right, and a lot of times live action stuff is seen as more adult and more mature. Like I know you've watched some of James Rawls' videos. Did you see his review of Ninja Turtles 3?
No.
Okay, well, he mentioned that he grew up with the cartoon, and when the first movie came out, he's like, yeah, this is the big boy Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They're allowed to swear, and the violence is a bit more intense than it was in the cartoon. So it's kind of that mindset as well. We got that with Transformers in 2007. It's like, while the 86 movie was definitely plenty violent and honestly kind of graphic at times, the 2007 movie is like, oh yeah, it's live action now, so people are going to think it's cool because it's not a cartoon. You know, that kind of thing. And
That's a very good criticism of the Michael Bay movies as well, because again, they have this this facade of being like, oh, we're the grown up, edgy, for grown ups version where we're violent and we swear and we make sex jokes and everything, and like that's what it's telling you. But in reality, it's actually more juvenile than what would come later and what came before.
absolutely.
Where those things that they put in to try to be, more grown up, more mature, don't hold up under scrutiny and just end up making it more more juvenile than 86 or anything that came after by comparison.
Correct.
So real quick, just a couple more things, and I want to move on from the first movie.
Yeah. All right. I'll save the overwhelming majority of my notes for the video project later, then, because if I actually do sit here and talk about all of them, then we'll be here all day because I took notes. I took many notes, and we can talk about them later. But I do have a couple points that I want to hit.
You can go off if you want, but I just want to finish my quick summary and then pass it over to you, and you can do your summary as well.
All right, go ahead. Yeah, I'll try to rapid fire these without taking too much time. Let me get my notes pulled up. There we go.
But yeah, so the story structure is fine. Like the origin story, the Allspark, and all that is all fine. Although get used to every single live action movie retconning the last one. There's no continuity in these. Every single movie retcons the previous one in some minor way or some major way,
while also referencing the previous movies.
Yeah, and acting like it's not a big deal that they retconned it. But
to be fair, G1 did the same thing. So
yeah, yeah, sort of. So I. In terms of the cast of the Transformers themselves, like I really like, I like the designs in this first movie way more than what came later. Even though like, Jazz might be borderlining on a weird racist stereotype kind of thing, and Ironhide, while looking cool, it does look particularly like busy and cluttered. And then I was never the biggest fan of the fact that Bumblebee couldn't talk or he talked through the radio. I thought that was that really got tiring over the course of this series, and I wish that he just talked normally. I think the way he talks at the very beginning of the Bumblebee movie is the most preferable to me. But I think that's to kind of make him seem less human. So it is this kind of like human animal companionship thing for Shia LaBeouf's character, and then later the character in the Bumblebee movie. But the Decepticon designs in the first movie are the best designs in the entire live-action series. Until we get to some of the designs in Rise of the Beast are really cool as well. But
I have a disagreement on that, but I'll put a pin in it. So go ahead.
The Decepticons in the first movie are at least like diverse in terms of their like size, shape, color palette, and everything, and they are like specific named characters, and they have this like big imposing presence, and the fight with them in the city is really cool, and they do seem like these very imposing, larger than life threats, and whereas later in the series I guess they didn't want to commit so many named characters to be, killed off. They wanted to have more like cannon fodder Decepticons for the Autobots to fight throughout the later movies, and so it just becomes a mess later on where all of the you get so many like copy pasted drone designs later on where they just the designs stop making any sense, and they become like really cluttered and overly busy, and it's a bunch of like black and gray, and you can't tell who is who anymore.
That.
And the fact that like I think in Dark of the Moon there's like random Decepticon drones that look just like the Predators from the movie Predator. And if you juxtapose that with like how Brawl and Blackout look and Bone Crusher look in the first movie, it's like these were better designs for sure, but you killed all of them, so you can't reuse them.
Starscream looks terrible though.
Oh yeah, we all love Dorito Starscream. And then from a world building standpoint, I really love the idea that the Decepticons are the most in disguise compared to the Autobots. So the Autobots disguise themselves as like really bougie, flashy cars. Like Bumblebee disguises himself as a car that hasn't come out yet.
Right.
Jazz disguises himself as a car that you literally could not buy at the time. Like they did not make the coupe version of the Pontiac Solstice for like years after that. And then
Optimus Prime is a big fancy rig with flames going down the side. Like that's not going to stick out at all.
Yeah. But that's at least believable if somebody like owns their own semi or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But Ironhide is a truck that probably, to get that specific truck and that specific specification, would have probably cost you like hundreds of thousands, like $100,000.
Yeah, and then
And so like
Laserbeak is like one of the best in disguise when we get to Dark of the Moon because he's changing into like a monitor. He changes into like a laptop, a tablet. He's like all over the place. And
I love the fact
Frenzy,
that
Frenzy is
I
like
love the fact that
boombox.
the I forgot about Frenzy. Yeah, you're right.
And
But
then when he gets his head knocked off, and then the head transforms into a smartphone, or not smartphone, just a cell phone. And I'm like,
yeah.
that is robots in disguise right there.
But I like how the Decepticons, because they disguise themselves as military vehicles, with the exception of Megatron and Barricade,
Yeah.
um, they they literally have the ability to blend in the best right in the heart of the enemy territory, and I think that's really cool. And it creates this like this sense of doubt where like the military forces are like, we don't know where they are, and we don't know if we are like targeting one of our own, or we don't know if we're like gonna send some vehicles into battle, and one of them is just gonna transform into a robot and blow us up.
And they hand
And
wave that by adding that they have energon readers later, and that's how they pick up on what's a Cybertronian and what's not.
yeah, which I think is a bit of a cop out and ruins some of the intrigue and tension with the first movie, where it's like,
It does make sense though, because it's one of those things of it's been 2 years, and we learned that they've had this technology for a long time, and a lot of our modern technology comes from the fact that they reverse engineered stuff from Megatron. But it makes sense that they would also come up with countermeasures now that the cat's out of the bag and people know that the aliens are out there. So they're like, oh, we don't need to hide that anymore.
Yeah, but I do like the specific reality of like, again, when Blackout first shows up in the first movie, it's like it is so it blindsides them so hard because they're like, we just thought this was one of our own, and now it's this incomprehensible alien thing that we are not prepared to fight. And then the same thing like in the city battle when you have the F-22s going in, and one of them just happens to be Starscream.
Yep.
And they're just like, oh shit, one of our jets is one of them now, and now we have to like keep track of which one it is and not lose sight of it, otherwise it could blend in again. And I just think that's really cool.
And I will say that when it comes to doing like a gritty military take on Transformers, I don't think a lot of the designs of the Decepticons especially are necessarily objectively bad, because a lot of them probably would end up looking like that if you have to transform into a real world like fighter jet or tank or something, and you're not allowed to be Technicolor to sell toys. But it doesn't make it as fun of a toy, because again, that's what Transformers is at its core. It's sell toys. But
yeah,
it's one of those things that to where it's a conflict of interest, where it looks cool as a military concept in this gritty, semi-realistic movie, but again, when you go back to its roots, it's not as fun from what it was. And
yeah, that's where the repaints come in.
right? Yeah.
Have you seen Deep Desert Brawl?
I don't think I have. No.
I'll send you a picture later. It's a repaint of the Leader Class Brawl toy, and it looks fucking sick. I really want it, but I haven't been able to find it in the wild in years.
Yeah, it's like I know that the Starscream toys were like all gray, and I know Starscream was predominantly gray, but original Starscream and every incarnation since then pretty much has had red on him somewhere. This one did not, but then you get like the obligatory Seeker redecos, and you get Thundercracker and Skywarp, and they're like in their original colors of like black and purple and blue. And
yeah, they did do a G1 color scheme of Voyager Starscream for the first movie, though.
Oh, okay, I missed that one apparently.
It might have been like a store exclusive or whatever. It wasn't. It may not have been part of the main line.
That makes sense, because I do know that back in the day they did like store color scheme exclusives, like some of the ones that I got as a kid, like my Rhinox toy that I got was like red and gray with stripes, and the Optimus Prime and Jetfire combo I got for Christmas one year, Optimus was blue and gold, and I don't know which I don't know which store gave what, but yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, I think specifically the Voyager Starscream, mine it's like this very metallic silver. It's called Deep Space Starscream, and it was a Target exclusive.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, so I guess to wrap up my thoughts on the first movie, I'll always be able to go back and watch it fondly, even though there are some things about it that haven't really aged well. Like I said, I would love to see that alternate storyline where Michaela would have been the protagonist. If somebody writes that or does a comic of it, I would love to see it. and
Support them on Patreon.
it um, I think it holds up in a way, but that way may just end up being nostalgia at the end of the day. Um, I will always enjoy this movie, but I'm not in a hurry to sit down my wife and our friends to watch it. Like I am some of these other movies we're going to be talking about. So
Yes.
I'll always love this movie. It'll always have a very special place in my heart. But I there are elements of it that haven't aged well, and it was, like I said, the canary in the coal mine for other flaws that the series would have later.
Yeah. All right. So one thing that I didn't really pick up on until you actually pointed it out. I don't remember if it was during just one of our conversations or during your video retrospective on the first movie's game adaptation. But the post 9/11 military patriotism is very up in your face at the beginning of the movie because it's like you got the band of brothers. One of them's like, I'm about to go home and see my kid for the first time. And then they see blackout approaching and they're like, "Oh, this helicopter apparently was shot down months ago. Are you sure about that, soldier?" "Yes, my brother was on that copter." Things like that, and they're just hamming it up, and it does feel like it's dollar store GI Joe. And someone actually told me recently that originally it was planned that this was going to be like an origin for GI Joe as well, but they either couldn't get the rights or it just ended up not panning out, and it just they went with Nest instead of GI Joe, which I got no problem with GI Joe and Transformers doing crossovers, but if this is the first movie in the live action Transformers series, get the Transformers right first before you try to get G.I. Joe in here, you know? I gotta say, Sam Witwicky is a colossal dork, and it wasn't until, I don't think it was quite midway, but it was when they had like the first fight with Bumblebee and Barricade that had Sam nearby, the part where he loses his pants because, is it Frenzy? Yeah, Frenzy just pulls his pants down, and I'm like, Shia LaBeouf's character has been making a fool out of himself since the start of the movie. He is over here trying to sell his eBay items in the middle of history class. He grovels to the teacher, says, "What would Jesus do?" to get an A so that he can go get a car. He brings his weird friend with him to a party they weren't invited to, even though it's a public lake, and they're like, "What are you doing here?" "We're climbing this tree." And then he suddenly is losing his pants. If Sam is supposed to be the audience proxy, I feel like this is the writers or directors making fun of the target audience. They're like, "Oh, look at these kids or teenagers who still play with Transformers. Yeah, they're such dorks. Let's humiliate them." Like, I might be looking too deep into that, but if he is meant to be our audience surrogate, then that's just the message I get here because he is constantly being humiliated. And he's just making a fool out of himself.
I don't know that I agree with that because I think that the narrative rewards him as a character too much for him being incompetent, and which is another one of the big criticisms where
later on we'll
and without getting too like socio-political or anything,
right,
it's the kind of thing of like this average, spoiled rich California white kid gets to be important while being otherwise pretty incompetent.
Yeah, like I gotta think for that when we get to Revenge of the Fallen.
Yeah, and it's like the values and politics of the narrative don't punish him for being incompetent. It's like he gets to be important by sheer accident and coincidence. That literally the only reason why he remains the protagonist
is because the writers decided.
He just happened to have the glasses that had the coordinates to Megatron, and later in the series, it's like they just keep him around out of obligation. He has another MacGuffin in the second movie, but in the third movie, it's like he really does have, fuck all to do with the rest of the characters, and I feel like the Optimus basically is the one that just keeps him around out of like, I look out for my friends kind of thing, and it's like
that's honestly all it is, and that's actually a detriment to the storytelling, like truthfully.
Yeah. And so it's like, whereas again, you compare that to other protagonists, and this is one of the big reasons why I liked Noah Diaz in Rise of the Beast, where he is like, he's like, "No, I'm gonna prove to you that I am competent, that I'm worth having around. Like, I'm going to do something meaningful to earn my place here. I'm not going to just be the protagonist because the narrative wills it. Like, I'm going to actually do something." And So I don't think that I don't think the portrayal of Sam Witwicky is necessarily like um, deprecating to the audience or mocking the audience, because I don't think that they are hard enough on him, narratively speaking. I think that they think that he is pathetic, and that is fine. Um they don't think that him being pathetic is a problem.
I will say that they definitely toned down him just getting humiliated for the sake of it. Like later on, it was almost isolated to just the first movie, and it actually kind of went away once they actually got to the base where Megatron was being held. But again, I've read before that Michael Bay didn't even like Transformers. He actively disliked it, and then he just was doing this for a paycheck. So given how a lot of the rest of the humor and tone is through the rest of the series, you understand what I mean when I say that it could come across as that, right? Like for that particular instance, like
I guess, but I wasn't under the impression that Michael Bay disliked Transformers as a brand, because apparently one of the reasons why he came back to do Age of Extinction in The Last Night is because he was initially going to be done with the series after a trilogy, but Paramount wanted them to make more, and we're going to give it to a different director. And he said, I can't let somebody else direct this fourth movie because this series is my baby, and I want to have creative control over where it goes.
right.
So I was under the impression that he at least either liked it enough or liked his interpretation of it enough to where but however
You can
I
like
will
your own
say,
interpretation of something without liking the source material.
sure, but and I will also say I'm talking on the other side of my mouth, where I think that he also did. It was kind of like one for them, one for me kind of thing, where um, he made Age of Extinction so that Paramount would fund the movie Pain and Gain for him, because that was the movie he wanted to make.
Ah,
So he did Age of Extinction and continued the series out of a sense of man, you need the rocket launcher right now, dude. You're gonna take out these flyers.
I got the shotgun on me, but I don't know where to get the rocket launcher on this stage.
I don't think you get it until a little bit later, but the aerial bots are a little bit weaker when they're in their alt modes. They're very tanky when they're in their robot modes.
Yeah. Do I got any? Yeah, I got some tank shells left. Brawl's yeah, Brawl's tank mode cannon is actually, I think it's stronger than Megatron's tank cannon.
It should be the same projectile.
It was incredibly powerful earlier. Like the splash damage was taking out those guys while they're on the bridge, and I am having trouble getting up the scaffolding. There we go. But so
Anyway,
whether or not I'm accurate with that, that's just kind of the impression it gave to me. I do have some notes here just of a bunch of dumb lines that either were completely out of place or were like just stupid. But I'm trying to keep this less than 2 hours long. The whole big recurring mantra of the Witwicky family is no sacrifice, no victory. So what exactly did Sam sacrifice? Like you were saying, he's incompetent and he is just the protagonist just because he's a protagonist. What exactly did he sacrifice for his victory, like in the first movie or in the sequel?
well, I guess the implication is that he's being courageous and risking his life, for the Allspark and everything. But even that, I think, is still a pretty low bar. Like I really think the only thing courageous he does is shove the Allspark into Megatron's chest. But even that's like he was kind of in the right place at the right time, and Prime was still protecting him for the most part.
Yeah, and like that's one thing I will say in the second movie. Yes, Prime does die, and is while protecting Sam. Like with Hot Rod in the original movie, I don't actually blame the protag for Prime dying. I do know that I played it up for the camera in my actual Transformers review. I don't actually blame Hot Rod for Optimus dying in the original. And nor do I blame Sam, because, I mean, it was fighting 3 Decepticons at once. And this...
in Revenge of the Fallen?
Yeah, Revenge of the Fallen. And then, Prime was just doing what Prime does. And Megatron had to get a cheap shot on him to win. I got some notes about Megatron a little bit later, but, yeah, most of these are just kind of stuff that I will probably go on tangents with if I am given enough time to do so. But again, that's better safe for later.
Yeah, do you want to move on to Revenge of the Fallen?
I will say one last closing thought for the first movie. Scorponok got his tail chopped off and then proceeded to F off under the sand and just disappeared, only to show up like right at the very end of the next movie 2 years later with no like announcement, just hey, I'm back for like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So that is what it is. Trying to think of any specific notes I could give that we haven't already covered in one way or another. Oh, this thing it bugs me just from a aesthetic and continuity standpoint. One thing that is consistent with G1 and in the Bayverse films as well is that typically Autobots have blue eyes and Decepticons have red. Frenzy has blue eyes, and in the next movie, The Pretender, the Alice is her name. She has blue eyes as well. But all the Decepticons have red eyes. Except for Wheelie because he changes sides later, but that doesn't count. He was born Decepticon. So it's like, why do they have blue eyes? Are they were they Autobot born and decided to change sides or what? Ah, dang it! Got killed again.
I mean I didn't notice that, but that definitely seems like anything in
that is
terms
a nitpick,
of like lore
but...
like that is just it's ill considered on their part. I feel like so.
Yeah.
I just don't think they paid enough attention to notice that as a correlation.
Yeah, this is one of those things that's where it's one of those you suspend disbelief when you're enjoying yourself, but when you're not, you don't. I do appreciate that Frenzy took the form of a boombox as an homage to Soundwave. I do appreciate that. Like that was kind of nice. What else
we're gonna move on to
yeah. Let's go ahead. All right, so this one I don't remember it being this bad, but yeah, it's way worse than what I remember from back in the day. What I want to start with is a lot of the writing makes absolutely no sense, like the whole Sam going to college thing, not him going to college, but the dad deliberately makes mention, first Witwicky in generations to go to college. And I'm like, wasn't his grandfather some famous explorer? I get you don't necessarily have to have a degree for that, but you at least have to have money. And if you guys are going to have this big fancy house, and you claim that sending him to this Ivy school is going to cost you $40,000 a year, Dad Witwicky, if you don't have a degree, where's all that money coming from? How do you have this much money?
Yeah, that is pretty weird. There's always a chance that could have been from his mom's side of the family.
Yeah, Bree did mention that. Bree also brought up a very good point about the Autobots and Decepticons that I'll talk about here in a sec. The whole nest thing. I'll talk about it in a sec. One thing that is kind of gross that I didn't catch the first several times was... I remember hearing them say the words, but I didn't actually understand what they meant by it, and the implications didn't sink in. The nerds with the computers, they hacked the dorm's roster to fill their dorm with all the hot girls. That is all kinds of creepy. Like...
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and I'm like, these are not good messages to be sending to kids, because, like, again, regardless of who the movie was made for, air quotes, kids are going to watch these movies because it's Transformers.
Yeah. No, the creepiness factor gets amped up exponentially in Revenge of the Fallen, for sure.
Yeah. So, one thing that Bree mentioned that I didn't even think about is, the Autobots and Nest are teamed up to hunt down Decepticons. If the thing is you're trying to reduce collateral damage, why not come at them with cryogenic weapons? Because we see that the Transformers are weak to ice, even in this continuity. Like, Megatron was frozen for, however long. They try to freeze Bumblebee when they attack him in the first movie. So we know that ice does affect Transformers. So when you have the Energon reading before you start shooting and before the big Colossus monster truck construction vehicle stands up and destroys countless cars and kills a bunch of people, why not come at it with some, like, cryogenic weapons like we saw in the previous film? Like that.
I think the explanation for that is literally just spectacle.
Yes, and that's one thing that is detrimental to the narrative, though. If it makes everyone look incompetent for not doing so.
Yeah, I just don't think they cared about that. I think they were like, okay, we want to see Demolisher destroy the city anyway.
Yeah.
And funny thing about that is that, so that fight takes place in Hong Kong.
Is Hong Kong or Beijing? It's somewhere. I think they said it was in China.
So I'm pretty sure it's Hong Kong because and I'm sure you're probably familiar at least with some of the history, and I might be botching some of this, and I apologize if I my history is wrong here, but
We weren't taught
Hong
in-depth world history here in America. We were taught American fan fiction.
yeah, Hong Kong seceded from China's government a long time ago, so it considers itself an independent nation. But China likes to ignore that likes to pretend that didn't happen, and likes to still exert power over them. And so there supposedly was some kind of like funding from China or something that went into a couple of these movies, but they didn't want to have um, China refused to allow like a mainland China city to be depicted as being destroyed in that battle. So like, oh, you can't have it be a mainland China. Have it take place in Hong Kong.
Okay, yeah.
And they're like, okay, and it's like, and because they're so uptight, they're like, oh, we can't show weakness. We can't show a city on mainland China being destroyed. Um, so, and that will have that's foreshadowing for later in the series.
That makes sense.
But what else about Revenge of the Fallen?
Where do I start? I already pointed out the problems that the Witwiki's talking about, like 40,000 is a big deal and whatever. It's like your financial state doesn't make any sense with what you're telling me. Another thing you mentioned before that, and I share this opinion because the more I watch these movies, the more I find I have similar problems to them that I do with Fate Collide Liner Prisma Ilia, although not nearly as sinful is the way I'd put it. It's a thing of you have a brand in an IP and you want to make all these callbacks and references to act like you're one of the cool kids, but you're not. Not Ashley, Alice is her name. The one who is a fembot that looks like a human. She apparently is classified as a pretender, which we didn't get any cartoons with the pretenders in them, as over here at least. But I know they were in the comics, so that is some semi-deep Transformers lore that average American fans after, like, 94 might not know about. And you're going to pull that, but this is how you're going to use it. And then later on, Wheelie mentions that the ancient Transformers looking for the Allspark were called the Seekers. And then Jetfire's teleportation is called the Space Bridge, which that gets retconned itself in the next movie with Sentinel Prime, but we'll get there when we get there. They do amp up the the creepiness factor when it comes to like over sexualization and all that, and it just shows me that the Witwikis cannot do healthy relationships. Like Sam and Michaela did help stop Megatron in the first movie, and then in the second movie, the parents are basically telling him, go find yourself a side piece while you're in college. And Sam's like, oh, phone call. Who's that? Oh, and the dad's like, oh, next week it could be Muffy. And I'm like, shut up. This is made even worse when you get to the next movie, and Megan Fox was written out of it because of her fallout with Michael Bay. So it's just incredibly distasteful in that regard. Like the parents are actively encouraging infidelity. I really, really don't like that.
Like, oh yeah.
And I had another. Oh, this comes in later. Like one line that not just the action on screen, but the line of dialogue itself was utterly garbage, and I could kind of tell Megan Fox was dying inside when she had to say it. The scene when you get to when they find Jetfire, and then Wheelie changes sides to the Autobots, and then he starts humping her leg, and she says the line. Sam's like, oh, "What are you letting happen to your leg there?" And she says, "At least he's faithful." The reason that is wrong on so many levels is, one, you're still mad at Sam because he basically got sexually assaulted by a Decepticon, which I will admit he could have done a bit more in that regard. Like, he was leaning into the kiss a little bit after Alice started it. But when you found out it was a Decepticon and she was, like, probing his brain, lighten up just a little bit. Be a little angry, but I would say lighten up a little bit. But then Wheelie literally tried to lead you into a trap because he knew Jetfire was a Decepticon. So, one, he just tried to get you killed, and then when he finds out, oh, hey, I don't have to be a Decepticon, he literally changes sides. no matter how you slice this, there's nothing faithful about this character.
Right.
He's definitely not faithful to his G1 counterpart, I'll tell you that much. So, like, there's nothing correct about that scene. It just, the more I watch it, the more I see wrong with it. I will say, I absolutely love Bayverse Jetfire. I love every single thing about him. Like, this Jetfire can do no wrong in my eyes. He's fantastic. But, it's just things that this sleazy factor is through the roof in Revenge of the Fallen compared to the previous one. I will say Dark of the Moon toned it down a little bit, aside from the gratuitous panty shot, like, right at the beginning. But aside from that, it wasn't...
And Deep Wang.
Yeah, that one... Yeah. But I will say credit that it was... Like, that's one of those that it didn't age well in, like, a couple of regards, because back then, like... those kind of homoerotic scenes were seen as like even more taboo than they are today. But it's one of those where, especially when you have the overly masculine audience, you know, their masculinity feels threatened in that kind of regard. Oh, we got
We'll
in the chat.
Get to that when we get to Dark of the Moon.
Right. Hello, Sideways 52. What else do I have for Revenge of the Fallen? God, I got 2 pages of notes on this one. Okay, here's one. Why is it that every Transformer created by the Allspark, or not all of them, but at least 2 of them, why is it that Transformers created by the Allspark have dick cannons? That happened in the first movie when they transformed the guy's phone using the Allspark radiation, and then when Sam drops the fragment and it lands in his kitchen, you get another Transformer with like a dick cannon, and then they gave Devastator Wrecking Ball scrotum. I feel like this is Transformers written by the jock boy who plays football and puts testicles on the back of his overcompensation truck. Like that's what this feels like.
We'll talk about some of the writing issues with Revenge of the Fallen, because that's a whole saga that Michael Bay likes to wash his hands of and pretend like it wasn't his fault.
I have so many issues. My thoughts are a little scattered because I'm trying to play the game for the visuals while also like glancing at my notes over here. I
will say, as far as the game goes, you definitely do need to like take out all these aerial bots before progressing forward too far, because if more of them spawn in while you're already dealing with them, you're just going to get lit up.
Like right now?
Yeah.
Man, there I go. All right, let's see. One quote from Revenge of the Fallen that is not meaningful, like in the context of the movie, but I think it sounds cool when they're talking about when they're introduced to the new bureaucrat guy. He meets Optimus Prime. The guy says, "If God made us in His image, who made him?" Like, I know the answer is Primus, obviously, but I thought it was I thought it's a cool sounding quote, if nothing else. Oh, yeah. Sideways here mentions twins are annoying. Replace them. RC and Sideswipe. Jolts. Matrix Jetfire. Oh yeah, RC. That's another thing. Okay, RC is actually very important to Transformers as a franchise, because even though the movie came out after season 2 of the cartoon, RC was the first designed female Transformer. And I can't remember the name of the person who was working on it. I think he was one of the directors or creative consultants. He really wanted to have a female Transformer in there because his daughter liked the series a lot. And so RC was the original, even though viewing-wise we got Elita 1 and her team first. But RC is shown in Revenge of the Fallen, barely given a dialogue, and then is killed off so unceremoniously. Like... yeah. I'm not going to claim outright sexism for that specifically, but with everything else we've seen in this movie, that's not a good look when you just brush her aside like that.
Yeah, the one Autobot you kill is the girl one.
Right?
Just like how in the first movie, the one Autobot you kill is the coded black one.
Yeah, you did mention that Jazz could be seen as somewhat of a racist stereotype. How exactly? Because he spoke in kind of a similar fashion in the original, and he was played by Scatman Crothers. So what exactly was different other than he was allowed to use adult language because it's a
more
live
of
action
just
movie?
Him having like a he is, again, it's the fact that he's speaking in Ebonics, and then he's the one that they kill off. I just thought was a little bit on the insensitive side, but not nearly as bad as what we get in Revenge of the Fallen with like Skids and Mudflap kind of thing.
I'd be lying if I said I didn't find them a little bit funny. It's kind of one of those white guy watches the Boondocks kind of funny ways, you know? It's like a lot of these jokes I shouldn't be laughing at, but part of me does.
I know.
I also didn't know that which one has the gold tooth? Is it Mudflap? No,
I
Skids.
don't even know.
The green one with the gold tooth is voiced by Tom Kenny, and he also voiced
SpongeBob.
Wheelie. Yeah, and
That's funny. I didn't know that.
yeah, he also reused this voice in another movie called Elf Bowling, and he also played a
Oh no.
yeah, he played a black character in that, so it could also be seen as a racist stereotype in that movie as well.
Kenny, no.
Yeah, he definitely needs to pick his projects better.
Oh my god. Anyway, sideways in the chat,
Oh
says
no!
they wish that the breakaway from the Revenge of the Fallen game was in the movie. I do agree, and I'm hoping that I know some other fans have pointed this out. They wish the Studio Series Gamer Edition would adapt that character for the toy line. I think that would be cool as well. You okay if I go off on Revenge of the Fallen?
Yeah, go ahead. I've got that's everything I have off the top of my head without just reading my notes word for word. But if I have something else to interject, I will do so when the opportunity presents itself. And I'm about to fall off the edge again, aren't I? I'm stuck.
So the when this movie first came out, I remember my theater experience of going to see it. Like I sent you the picture of my ticket stub.
Yeah, you still have the
that I
ticket
found
stub
the
from
other
years
day,
ago.
and I remember enjoying it when I first saw it in theaters. But I think the reason why I enjoyed it was because I was with a very energetic crowd who like applauded at the movie, and there was a couple of things that were like little Transformers references, you know, like Starscream and Megatron bantering, Optimus and Jetfire doing the whole Power Links thing from Armada.
Yep.
It's stuff like that I thought was cool. But like immediately when I started talking to my other friends about it after seeing it, they were like, "Oh, you like that movie? That movie was terrible." And I was like, "Was it really?" And they were starting like pointing out things to me that I hadn't considered, because I was like 16 at the time this movie came out.
Yeah.
And then later, you know, through the 15 years of internet discourse and everything, and Revenge of the Fallen was like the benchmark movie of like, if you had to make an analogy or a comparison to like something that was bad or schlocky or, you know, everything wrong with Hollywood kind of thing, like you would make a comparison to Revenge of the Fallen. That was your allegory. And so like this movie was mocked relentlessly for, like I said, 15 years. It was like always that like benchmark bad comparison movie. And I guess to talk about, you know, the faults of it, it's what everybody already knows. It's what you pointed out. You know, it's unbelievably sleazy. Like they've ratcheted up the sleaziness so much from the first movie.
This movie won 2 Razzie Awards.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, I found that out while I was doing a little research before we started this. But yeah, it won at least 2 Razzie Awards. I'm pretty sure.
That's so good. So like Sam's parents are insufferable in this movie. Like yes. I remember the thing about like the pot brownies and all that, and it's like, okay, they were already awkward in a funny way in the first movie, where it's like, yes, that was a pretty raunchy joke, but I can handle that. And then it's like, in this movie, it's like we're just gonna take their sort of raunchy humor and just crank it up as much as we can.
I get that your kid is now legally an adult and you're probably not holding back anymore, but knock it off. There's children in the audience.
Yeah, and then again, like Skids and Mudflap are awful racist stereotypes. The designs in this one get a little bit worse. You know, we have the new Devastator and his wrecking balls and that whole thing. And honestly, like so before I forget, Michael Bay likes to hand wave away criticism of this movie by saying that it was created during one of the last, prior to the most recent one of the last Writers Guild strikes, which is technically true. There was a writer's strike going on shortly after the release of the first movie and when this movie was greenlit, essentially.
Like the Bayverse films, except for The Last Night. Yeah,
valid.
I will say,
valid.
Yeah, like, even though Revenge of the Fallen is a horribly sleazy movie, when you get, like, one thing that I do try to judge these movies on is how are the actual Transformers themselves in it? At least Revenge of the Fallen, when it comes to just the Transformers, is watchable. The Last Night is not. But
Yeah.
we'll get. I'll get to that a little bit later.
Um, yeah. So real quick, the writer strike.
Yeah.
So Michael Bay likes to say that that was the reason why Revenge of the Fallen turned out the way that it did, because apparently the script was written in like a 3-week period, and however, he still had basically the same writers from the first movie, and they are writers that like are still kind of successful Hollywood writers. It's like the same writers that did the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies, the first and second one.
Yeah.
And I think they also wrote Dark of the Moon, and like they also had, I think, like 6 months to do script revisions after that 3-week period before the movie went to cinematography, actually went to filming, meaning that no one was forcing you to put Skids and Mudflap in the script. No one was forcing you to put Wheelie humping Michaela's leg in the script. No one was forcing you to put Pop Brownies in the script. Like, you still chose to do that. You can't blame the writer's strike on that. That was still like, nobody pumped the brakes and said, no, I don't want that in the movie. Everybody was like, nope, that's totally fine. Ship it. So
I will admit, like, even depending on what day it is, even Devastator's Wrecking Ball Scrotum does sometimes get a laugh out of me because it, at least as far as them being construction vehicles, it makes sense, but it's still dumb. And the fact that he had to say below the enemy scrotum, just
yeah. Oh, and John Turturro as well is like the best part of this movie. Like
Agent
he
Simmons
was already kind of. He was already pretty charismatic in the first movie, but he's so over the top in this movie. It's just amazing.
I don't know the actor's name. Is that the guy who plays Agent Simmons?
Correct.
Yeah, like I've said before, he is like the one of the few consistently entertaining parts about the series in every single movie. Like, if he's in it, he is great. The best part. Even in Dark of the Moon, like I feel like he's still one of the best parts in that too. But
Sideways points out Long Haul is a great design. I do like Long Haul quite a bit, especially again in the video game for Revenge of the Fallen.
I think my favorite Bayverse design character is probably Sentinel Prime. Like, I really love Dark of the Moon Sentinel Prime, and like I said, I love Revenge of the Fallen Jetfire.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I guess my final comment about Revenge of the Fallen is, like I said, the plot is pretty nonsensical. This was when they first started basically retconning the previous movie every time, because again, the origin story of, not to get lost in the forest looking at trees and like whinging about lore stuff, but like the plot of the first movie is literally, okay, the Allspark crash landed on Earth millions of years ago. The Transformers have been looking for it for centuries. The only person who came close was Megatron, and he's been trapped here. The rest of the Decepticons don't know he's here until, Beacon was sent out, etc., all that other stuff. And then in this movie, we find out, oh no, Cybertronians have known that have known about Earth for thousands of years because the Fallen did like the ancient aliens thing and influenced the building of the pyramids. And it's like, okay, well, did the Allspark find the Earth by sheer coincidence, or did it not? And
that's not even touching on the Sentinel Prime conspiracy in the next movie either.
Yeah. And then everything in Dark of the Moon's setup is like, okay, was that considered or established when they wrote the first movie? Absolutely not. Like, they are pretty much just bullshitting these as they go with no consideration for any continuity or anything like that. So I also think the Fallen as a design is just super ugly.
It's ugly, but it's alien, and I do kind of appreciate how it feels like real Cybertronian. Like, again, this is meant to be like a semi-realistic alien robot. Yeah, that actually does look like Alien, but it doesn't. It doesn't look like Transformers. I don't even think he gets an alt mode in the movie.
Yeah, I don't remember if he does or not, but he's also like, he's just cartoonishly evil, cartoonishly powerful, but then also gets like, I love that, like, again, Prime gets killed off, which again is a reference to G1 that I appreciated at the time, and then they revive him, and he's like It basically is like, hey, where the hell am I? And they're like, oh, we're in Egypt. The Fallen's right there. He's on the pyramid. He's gonna destroy the Earth. Got it.
So,
Jetfire. Let's go kick his ass.
so
And then like 30 seconds later, he's dead.
the whole thing about the machine absorbing the sun, that's actually a reference to a G1 episode as well. I can't remember the name of the episode, but the Decepticons build a machine to absorb the sun to create energon cubes.
Now you can eat sunlight.
Jurassic Horut 2003 says that Transformers 1 looks childish. I will admit the visuals are probably the weakest part of the movie, but this is the best Transformers movie we've gotten since '86. I'm just going to say that up front right now.
We'll get to it. But yeah, the designs of the characters look very Pixar at first.
They look better in motion than they do in stills.
Yeah, I will say that like in terms of like the tone of the story, it is not juvenile.
No.
There are some jokes that don't work in TF1, and we'll get there, but like it's actually a very like emotional origin story for the characters, and like has some pretty heavy plot points. So like it does have that very Pixar like designs to the characters in TF1, but like in terms of the tone of the story and how it's written, it's not the least bit. I would say it's far less juvenile than what we got with the Bayverse.
Right. One thing.
Are we good to move on?
One thing is just like at the very beginning of the movie, we see the African tribe fighting a tiger. Tigers are not native to Africa, and this does take place in Africa because it has to be in Egypt. Like the tigers are native to India, and if someone wants to say, "Oh, Pangea," we're given a timestamp. It's like 14,000 years ago. Pangea split apart millions of years ago. So
that would be an insane thing to correlate with.
It's not important, but when that's the first thing you see and they're already getting stuff wrong, and again, if we can't trust you with the tiny things, how do we trust you with the big things? One of those. It's just...
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a... Crap. I had some notes that I wanted to talk about, but... a lot of them are probably just long, rambling tangents that aren't...
Yeah, I do have one tiny little thing about Revenge of the Fallen that I'll say before we can move on to Dark of the Moon. And like I said, I think this is where I noticed the design starting to get a little lazy because, you know, say what you want about CGI and everything, but like 3D special effects like that are hard. Modeling is hard. Rigging is hard. Rendering is hard. Like these things are incredibly technical processes that take hundreds of man hours to accomplish. And the visual effects in these movies are really impressive for what they are in terms of like, it's more of a triumph of like, let's throw money at the problem until it's solved than it is like somebody doing something that's never been done before. But I guess where I'm going with that is that they started recycling character designs in this movie, I feel like, to just cut time on the back end of having to like design a new character or pay a storyboard or a concept artist or whatever, because Sideways in Revenge of the Fallen, who transforms into an Audi R8, has like almost the exact same head sculpt as Barricade does. And then the whole thing of Grindor is like, again, when the movie first came out, like we were just calling him the Blackout clone for a while. We didn't even know he was a different named character because they just took Blackout's model and just reused it. And I got some. I actually, not to peel back the curtain too much, but I actually wrote a joke in the script for my Fall of Cybertron video. That was a reference to like people were like actuallying me about like what type of helicopter Blackout was. Again, Grindor is the exact same one, and it's the exact same character model, but Grindor is like inexplicably bigger than Blackout. I'm like, how do you arrive at that when you're the same helicopter? I don't understand how that's supposed to work.
Oh, it's mass shifting. Like, you know, like how in the G1 Cliff Jumper is not a Volkswagen Beetle, he's actually a Porsche, and yet he's the same size as Bumblebee. It's totally respectful to Transformers canon and lore and origins. Oh. No, it's not.
But again, it's like there is nothing like on screen, at least in Revenge of the Fallen, that is visually distinct about Grindor. It literally just seems like they just recycled Blackout's character model, or at least tried to make you forget
I thought it
that
was Blackout.
that he died. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
I was gonna say one thing that just bugged me about them bringing in the Matrix. Actually, no. Before we get to the Matrix, the whole thing of only a Prime can defeat the Fallen is repeated by both the Fallen and Jetfire. Why is only a Prime can defeat the Fallen? Because if you look at the first movie, Megatron blitzed Optimus, and Optimus only survived because Sam put the cube in his chest. And if Megatron can overpower Optimus Prime, couldn't Megatron overpower the Fallen? And like it took, he was the Fallen is stronger than 6 other Primes, and they had to literally sacrifice themselves to create a tomb for the Matrix of Leadership. Which the Matrix of Leadership is nothing but a big energy key, and they're like, oh, it's not found, it is earned through courage and sacrifice. And I'm like, but it's just it's a battery. You took what was a great big piece of Transformers mythos, basically contains the afterlife of all Autobots, and was something that could destroy Unicron, which is basically robot Satan, and you're going to reduce it down to, it's a key that starts up a sun machine that apparently can only be found by somebody who has demonstrated great sacrifice, even though the second Optimus wakes up, the Fallen jumps him, beats him down, and takes it from him. Like...
Yeah, the answer is bad writing.
Yes.
That is the answer.
I missed a direction, and I am stuck at the moment. Laser gates, how do I get through these?
You have to transform and fly through a little vent and blow up the power panel for the... you're going the right way.
Okay.
Yeah, you can blow up the power switch for the vent, for the laser grid.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's like, I did this a while back, but I haven't played this mission a second time yet.
Oh, you just missed it. It was the thing on the wall back there.
Down? Or...
Yeah, you were going the right way. You could see it on the wall behind the laser grid, over that passageway there. Anyway, small little thing about that too, about whether or not Megatron could have destroyed or could have beaten the Fallen. Is like, Megatron is never as strong in these movies after the first movie because he is...
he's a loser. Megatron is a loser in the live-action films.
Yeah, he's always operating in like a weakened state after the first movie, after he's been brought back. Right here on the wall.
This right here?
No. Look at the laser grid.
Okay.
I think there might be a little bit of a lag because of the stream as well.
Yeah, stream. Okay.
If you float over the Energon puddle and look at the other laser grid over there, it's on the wall behind it, and you shoot that.
Oh,
anyway,
I just got it. I shoot straight through. I was looking for a thing to fly through. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay. But yeah, like Megatron is a loser. We good to move to Dark of the Moon, or are we?
Yeah, I'm ready to move to Dark of the Moon.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and jump ahead a little bit. Megatron is a freaking loser because it's like he gets brought back in Revenge of the Fallen, and he's like, even in death there is no command but mine. He immediately goes and kneels before the Fallen. Then he has his Master of the Fallen, and then it turns out he was making a deal with Sentinel Prime the whole time. Sentinel is just literally bitch-slapping him around, ripping chunks out of his head while he's got termites eating his brains. And Megatron sits around and does nothing the entire movie until the very, very end. He does nothing. Megatron, the great leader of the Decepticons, does jack in the third movie. And he's like, I just want to be in charge again. Where would you be without me, Prime? You are nothing, sir. You are absolutely nothing after the first movie. Which even then, you weren't much for very long because you were out of the movie for the majority of it.
Yeah, it is kind of a shame because he was pretty intimidating in the first movie. He was like just so much bigger than all of the other Transformers and just had this very powerful aura to him.
Yeah, and the thing where he claps his hands together, makes a giant cannon, join them in extinction. That was a pretty cool line. But
yeah, he's cool in the first movie, but I think you're right there.
Even
he
going
spends
forward,
the rest of the series being quite pathetic.
Going forward into Age of Extinction, he comes back as Galvatron, and he's not even the main antagonist. And in The Last Night, he is also nothing. He's there, but he's nothing. Like, they do not know how to use their Megatron correctly.
Yeah.
But,
so Dark of the Moon, UK, if I go off on this one?
Yes, this is one where I feel like we're actually probably going to have some differences in opinion. I do remember a while back, I mentioned that I thought it was the best of the original three, and in some regards, I still hold that opinion, but in some, I'm like, oh, wow. But yes, go ahead. Go ahead with yours.
Yeah, and to be fair, I have heard some takes about Dark of the Moon recently that I hadn't previously considered that I respect, but at the same time,
You're allowed to
fucking
disagree.
hate
Yeah.
Dark of the Moon, dude. I think it is the worst. It's the worst out of the original trilogy, and might be the worst in the series aside from The Last Night. Um, it is a chore to get through this movie. Oh my god, is it insufferable? And I never saw this one in the theater, which I was actually a little bit bummed out about back in the day because I wanted to see it in the theater, but I didn't. My dad and my brother, who saw the first two in the theater with me, didn't. They wanted to go see a different movie, and then by the time I had another opportunity, it was too much time had passed, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to see it until it was on DVD, and I was just very disappointed because it's so long, and so much of the screen time is just for nothing because like if the previous two movies weren't trying to um uh glorify the military,
The third one
um
absolutely does.
the third one is trying to glorify the USA's accomplishments with NASA and like the Apollo missions and everything, because it is just the opening of this movie is a giant like jack off session to NASA and the Apollo missions and the moon landing and everything, and it's so overly long, has nothing to do with the story. It's just so egregious, and it's just like, don't you feel so proud about all the accomplishments of America? And it's like, no, I really don't. I kind of want to get on with the story. And
Show me the robots.
and then we get to Shia LaBeouf's character, and he is at his worst.
Right,
He is loud. He is annoying. He is petty. He is petulant. Like he kicks other smaller, weaker robots just because he's frustrated. And
Also, we got the very too loud foreshadowing of Wheelie watching the episode of Star Trek. Oh yeah, this is the episode when Spock goes nuts because Leonard Nimoy plays Sentinel Prime, and then Leonard Nimoy also later uses one of Spock's most famous quotes: "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few," or the one. He didn't finish the quote, but yeah.
Which kind of a lot of Star Trek fans were not happy with the use of that line, but without getting lost in the forest again. So we have a replacement for Michaela's character because again, Megan Fox and Michael Bay did not like each other on set, and I think it's unfortunate because I think Megan Fox made the right call if she didn't want to work for Michael Bay because he was a chauvinist or whatever, then she made the right call. But like the replacement for it's a shame to me that like he had so much power over her career because she didn't have that many other theatrical movie appearances after that, and I think that that's a bit of a shame.
And yet she came back for Ninja Turtles, which was also directed by Michael Bay.
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher there. But anyway, so the actor they got to replace her is like just not. It's literally the same character. Like they didn't write this character like Carly to be any different from Michaela. It's just Michaela again. Like it's basically the same script. It's like you would have just had Megan Fox saying these lines, but now you're having this like no-name Victoria's Secret model saying them, and she's not nearly as interesting or charismatic, and it doesn't really make any sense in the story for Shia LaBeouf to land this Victoria's Secret model girlfriend.
Yeah, that's another thing.
They doesn't have the established chemistry anymore because like at least with him and Michaela, it's like they had a relationship built up over two other movies gradually, and this is supposed to be like the payoff of them like cohabitating together and everything. But no, it's like it's some other girl, and it's not very believable.
And in the story, it is confirmed that Michaela dumped him.
Yeah, which I actually do think is defensible because we see how emotionally unstable he is in this movie.
Yeah, like I got points for what the parents are saying later, and other stuff, but I got stuff I want to say like early on in terms of like the job hunting and all that. But we'll get there in a sec, I guess.
Yeah, well,
But yeah, like
that was actually going to be my next point. Is that it's funny that we finally get the payoff of him having to actually accomplish something on his own,
and
which
he
is
can't
that
do
he
anything.
can't do it. Like he can't. He was given the best opportunity possible with a silver spoon, with an expensive college degree and everything.
The government paid
And
for it, by the way. Our taxpayers' dollars at work, everybody.
oh my God, you're right. Um, and then he's in the job market and he can't get a job, which you know
There's a couple scenes that
that
I
would
thought
be
were just complete bull. Like there's one where he makes mention, "Oh, I happen to get a medal from the president," and then like, "Oh, you got a medal from Obama?" Well, we're mostly Republicans in this office, so and I'm like, that doesn't sound unrealistic. Lesson number one: don't mention politics at a job interview. But lesson number two is like that with. If we look at an alternate timeline and assume that John McCain had won the 2008 election and he was mentioned as the president in these movies, would they have just reversed the lines and said, "Oh, we're mostly Democrats in this office"? Like, was it just to crap on Sam so he couldn't get a job, or
yeah,
what?
I feel like that. I feel like they would have done it
Yeah,
that way.
yeah. Like,
Um,
I don't see, especially with just how like again overly military propaganda the movie is. Like, I'm not gonna split hairs, but in my experience, like military patriotism does seem to be more of a right wing thing, or at least hand waving a lot of stuff. You know, like
correct.
I'm not gonna delve too deep, but given where I grew up and how like which way this part of the country leans politically, you get the idea. But
Yeah.
so I thought that was really dumb. And then we actually do learn what Sam's degree was in. I actually have it written down. Let me barrel roll so I
Business
don't.
degree, isn't it?
Here it is. Majored in geopolitics with a minor in tech studies.
Interesting.
What is geopolitics? Like, did I hear him right when he said that? Like, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, I don't know an easy way to summarize that. But
Is
it does make sense that he would be looking for like a white collar corporate job kind of thing. And
is
he's
Sam
just-
Witwicky smart enough to get said job though? Like, is he competent enough to get said job with what we've seen?
Well, we know he's not competent enough, but he's just not charismatic enough either, because you're dealing with a bunch of white collar assholes,
Yeah.
like a bunch of Wall Street type people, and he just he can't play nice with them enough to get in their good graces, which is, partially a criticism of him and partially a criticism of that industry and that status quo being really shitty. But
Hello, Master Chief Snake. Welcome to the chat. He's one of my regulars. He's in there pretty much every stream.
oh yeah, I remember the name.
But
Yeah, so I find everything. This is when the human characters are the most insufferable to me. Is in this movie. They are all awful. Like I don't even remember any good like John Turturro moments in this movie or
I do.
anything. And
I remember funny moments. Good is debatable, but I remember there's several that are funny, at least to me.
yeah, and you've got like
Dutch.
the
I love Dutch.
you've got the guy that's like the one that's allied with Soundwave. Where
Dylan.
he's such an asshole, and you've got
He made it entirely too personal, like for no good reason other than just, oh hey, he happens to have Bumblebee. Like
Yeah.
later on in the movie when Bumblebee's captured, Dylan tells Soundwave, hey, don't take him prisoner, execute him. And I'm like, you just did that because that's Sam's car, it will make him sad. That's literally the
Yeah.
only reason.
Yeah, and like he at least is like somewhat of a compelling like rival character for Sam, but like I just don't care about any of Sam's personal drama in this movie at all. Like his character arc is so far beyond being relatable to me that I'm just not invested in work, because he's not a good person in this movie. He's mean-spirited, petty, in acting very entitled, and it doesn't come across as relatable at all.
I will say,
juxtapose that with what we get later in the series with our protagonists in the Bumblebee movie and in Rise of the Beasts, where they have relatable personal conflicts that you can actually root for them.
Now, Sam does mention that he was in Washington D.C. and mentions the government could have gotten him a job if he tried, which I'm like, I do understand where he's coming from in that regard, not getting as much help as he could have gotten, but it's his whole thing of he thinks he's a major hero when The only thing he really did was just what would be expected of anybody in the same situation. You just happen to have the matrix of leadership, or you happen to know where to find it. And I don't care if his destiny called you to it or whatever. It's a thing of if you didn't do it, the entire planet was going to die. So what are you going to do? Not do it? So
Well,
you were doing the bare
it's
minimum.
like
And
he happened to have the magical MacGuffin twice in a row.
Yeah.
But he didn't really do anything other
And-
than that, and so he's acting all entitled,
No.
like, oh, I saved the world twice, and they don't want to do anything for me, blah blah blah. And it's like, you really didn't do it. I mean,
you didn't do it. Like,
You didn't really do
you woke
anything.
Optimus up. Yes, you did. Like, that's good, but others could have done it if they had had the same gear. And honestly, after you gave Jetfire and Michaela and Agent Simmons the glyphs, they don't need you anymore.
yeah, it's like, we'll give you a job polishing Prime's rims.
Now, I will say one thing that didn't make any sense to me at all is the job he did end up getting hired for, which I really like the boss in that office. He was just the right amount of quirky for me, but I also don't get if he was applying for a specific job, like administrative aid, I think is what he said his application was. He said, no, we're going to start you in the mailroom. I don't know how those kind of white-collar jobs work, but I don't understand the correlation between, administrative assistant, you have to work your way up from the mailroom. Like, I got my degree in culinary arts. I'm a cook. You know, that'd be like if I wanted to go apply at some hotel like the Marriott and be like, yes, I want to work in your kitchen because I'm a cook. And they're like, nah, we'll start you on laundry. And you can work your way up to cook.
Yeah,
Just
I do
on
think
the
it's
surface,
pretty,
I don't know
pretty
how those...
unrelatable.
Yeah, I don't know how those jobs work because I am not a white-collar worker, but from just the standpoint of the average person, that doesn't make any sense. And it does, like, him taking the job just so he could have a job, and the guy said, if you get a job here, doors open everywhere. He did say, you want the job after this one, but you have to do this one first. I get that, but it did seem kind of disrespectful of, you got this degree, now you're just going to do grunt work, which, okay, that is kind of semi-realistic in today's world. All right, fair.
Yeah,
But
I think it's a fair point because they typically do like to place you in jobs that you actually have the skills for.
maybe he saw right
and
through Sam's
sometimes-
facade. Like, he only got the degree because the government paid for his tuition.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyway,
The parents were
other things
also insufferable in this one. Like, Sam was also really insufferable, like, when they talked about Michaela, because he said, she dumped me, I moved on to something better. What about Carly is better than Michaela? She is nothing. She is a nothing burger of a character. And there's no disrespect to the actress at all. It's just the character has nothing. She, again, like you said, she basically was written for Megan Fox, but Megan Fox couldn't be there. And the only thing that really changed is they gave her a British accent. And the job she had working for an accountant firm doesn't really seem up Michaela's alley. She would probably be working more for like a mechanic shop somewhere. But also,
doesn't she maintain like a classic car collection or something?
Yeah, she maintains the classic car collection, and, like, honestly, Dylan having that, from a writing standpoint in the real world, that was probably originally meant for Michaela, but in universe, it was just so they could have a place for Soundwave to hide in plain sight.
Yeah, I do think that was meant for Michaela's character for sure. But yeah, and this is we're not trying to be like, God forbid women do anything.
No,
kind of thing
absolutely
as
not.
As the character criticism, but it is just kind of like, it's more of a criticism of
The
writing.
director,
It's
of the
like-
writing and director of how they use their characters.
Yeah, and it does. It's not that we dislike Carly for being a female character.
No,
It's
absolutely not.
Specifically the spitefulness of the writing for them to be like, I moved on to something better, when it's like, that's just kind of like a backhanded comment towards Megan Fox.
Especially if you look at
Or-
Revenge of the Fallen, when the dad said, oh, next week it could be Muffy. And I'm like, okay, well, here's Muffy. And then the mom is like, Sam, you let literally she says, one world-class hottie get away. Are you going to do the same for this one? And he's like, no, she's the one. You haven't even said I love you yet. And Carly holds that over his head saying, we might get to I love you when you pay your half of the rent.
Yikes.
Yeah, like,
Jesus.
she literally said that. And furthermore, I had it in my notes here. I'm juggling trying to get these Autobots off me while I'm glancing at my notes section over here. It's just Dylan creeping on Sam's girlfriend was also unnecessary. I do think that a lot of the over-sexualization and sleaziness was toned down in this movie, again, except for the gratuitous panty shot right at the beginning. But
And Deep Wang.
the characters were just awful in general, though. And what was that last point I was gonna make? It's gonna bug me. Where is that? Where is it?
Yeah, and then just the Transformers themselves are woefully underutilized.
And yet somehow they actually have more screen time in this one than they did in the previous two movies. At least that's what it felt like.
But it doesn't. They don't do anything until
it's
the
because
last battle.
The last hour is one big long action sequence.
Yeah, which some people like that action sequence. I actually find it kind of tedious.
It is tedious and it does drag at times.
I think the main reason is that it. I don't like the. So I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here about the actual Transformers characters.
I remember what I was going to say. Before we get on that,
Sure.
It just finishes off my point over there. The Witwikis do not know how to do good relationships. I said that earlier. And another couple lines that were said in Dark of the Moon when they're having that little family powwow in the RV. The dad says, Sam, you're always wrong. Get used to it. Happy wife, happy life. And I'm like, no, it's happy spouse, happy house. You got to both be happy in the relationship. Like, you don't know how to do good relationships, whoever is writing this. I don't know if Michael Bay instructed the writer or what, but no, just
that's some boomer humor for sure.
and that's never been funny, never has. I've never thought it was funny. But okay, so go ahead with the Transformers themselves in this movie.
Yeah, real quick, Sideways is saying that Soundwave of Dark of the Moon
was a Mercedes, yeah,
had worked as a Mercedes SUV. So in the video game, he is.
Yep.
In the Dark of the Moon game, Soundwave is a Mercedes SUV instead of the Mercedes SL.
Oh, cloakers. That's why I can't see them.
So, also your rockets from your jet boat are pretty good against the cloakers because of the splash damage.
Duly noted. Thank you. Let's see.
Yeah, Shockwave I think is a really cool design in Dark of the Moon. I think his design is probably the best Decepticon design we've had since the first movie. I think he looks sick.
I thought Ravage was really awesome in the second movie. I had that in my notes. I just forgot to say it. I love live action Ravage's design. The Mono Eye is a little weird, but the rest of it was awesome.
But none of the other designs work for me. Again, the Wreckers are there in Dark of the Moon, and it's just something to make the fans happy. It's just so they can say Wreckers wreck and roll, and the comic book fans will squee. And
it's basically
that's all there is.
It's basically how Batman vs. Superman just jingles keys and throws a bunch of references at the wall and hopes the fans will enjoy it and overlook the flaws.
Yeah, and the same thing with
Sentinel Prime and the Space Bridge.
Yeah, and so
I'm not even gonna complain. I'm not gonna complain that the Space Bridge is supposed to be Decepticon tech and not Autobot tech. I'm not gonna complain about that because different continuity. But Sentinel mentions that he invented the Space Bridge and only he can control it. Jetfire deliberately says in the previous one, I said I was opening a space bridge. So,
right.
Is Jetfire older than Sentinel? Sentinel did he know Jetfire? What's going on here? Or is it just
again the answer is bad writing?
Bad writing. They don't care about the continuity.
They didn't care. They didn't consider any continuity with going from one movie to the next. They happily retconned everything from the previous movie.
If I wanted to try to hand wave it, I could say maybe he meant just the sheer size and scope of the space bridge, and not just the instant teleportation. He just the fact that you could transport a literal planet into another planet's atmosphere, which we'll get to that here in a little bit. But
yeah, it's really, really stupid. Yeah, I don't think any of the Transformers characters are particularly utilized very well in this movie. And then
Q was cool, but he was pretty much just there as a plot device to give Sam the weapons to fight back against Starscream, who went out like a loser. Like, Starscream got disrespected there at the end.
Is that the like Einstein bot?
Yeah, and Q is a reference to the James Bond films. His name, because he's the gadget guy.
Oh, okay. I thought that. Okay, I guess that is the reference they're going with. I didn't know if that was intentional or not, but
yeah.
So like this movie is, it has this dark gray color palette throughout the whole thing. It's dark and gloomy and overcast through the entire finale, like an hour's worth of screen time, no color to be seen, and yet all these action shots and effects are made for 3D, because this was the era of like every single movie had to have a 3D conversion.
Yeah.
And so there's the shot you mentioned of like Bumblebee flings out Sam and has to catch him mid transformation and everything. That was really cool. That was just done for 3D. Or there's a shot with like Prime like punches straight through a guy like towards the camera.
Yeah,
like,
Shockwave with his brass
camera.
knuckles. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so like that I think has not aged well about this movie. And then I don't like the vehicles. Like I don't like the weird like it just when I see the weird vehicles they're flying around in the city battle, I'm like, okay, they're already Transformers. Like they can already turn into jets and stuff. Um they don't need additional vehicles. Like that doesn't make any sense.
Not for atmospheric flight.
Like
I would
it
say
just
if it
looks
was
like
in
something
space,
they
maybe.
wanted to desperately sell like a playset of.
Did
like,
they though?
when
Like, did they have those toys? Because I would have bought one of those if I had seen them.
I don't know if they did or not, but that's what the design like made it. That's what I felt like they were going for. Again, the weird like Avengers space ship monster thing that comes out of the sky and starts bombing the city.
The thing is, this movie predates the first Avengers movie. I did double check that because it looks exactly like the Leviathan.
Yep.
It looks like the Leviathan, and then at the end it gets sucked back into the space portal. And I'm like, oh, so did Avengers rip this, or did these draw from a common source material? Like, or were these designs in the Marvel comics? And that could have been a nice throwback.
I really just think it's like, hey, we need generic action set piece for the finale. Right. I really think that's all there is to it. And then, like I said, the only part of the finale that I like is just a very final moment with Prime, where he's like, he gets the jetpack and he's cutting through all those guys and kills Shockwave. And
that moment is ruined by Prime getting strung up because he was flying incompetently, and he's stuck there for like a good 20 minutes while the wreckers try to cut him down.
But then you get the payoff for it later.
Yeah, the payoff later is good, but that part didn't need to happen. And these movies are honestly about an hour longer than they need to be. All of them.
You could cut these down by a huge amount. We keep that with the newest movie for sure.
We keep seeing all of these Star Wars fan edits of like the different shows and movies that Disney's put out, and they're like, "Here, I made it better." And I'm like, "Can we get some of that for the live action Transformers films? Just cut out like all the garbage." Like specifically one scene from Dark of the Moon, I can talk about. Sam pulls up to the military base, is like, "Hey, I need to talk to Lennox. Tell him the Decepticons are back." And then they have that whole thing of, "Do not hit my car. It's a collector's item." Blah 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 blah. You could have cut that down. Just have Sam say, "I need to talk to Lennox. Decepticons are back." And then it cuts to them walking into the base. Like, they could have done that edit, and it would have been a lot more smooth, and it would have made Sam not look like a douche as much. Like, were they trying to make Shia LaBeouf look bad in this movie?
It sure does seem that way, because man, is he awful in this. But I think we finally need to address the elephant in the room, and the thing that's going to be controversial about Dark of the Moon, and that is Sentinel Prime, voiced by the late Leonard Nimoy.
I love Sentinel Prime. I love Bayverse Sentinel Prime.
So, I do like his design.
I like his design. I like his voice. I'm even okay with his role in the story. Like, I like pretty much everything about him.
Yeah, I would love to one day find the original, like, leader class Dark of the Moon Sentinel Prime toy from back in the day, because I think the studio series Sentinels, like, the two different versions of them look really ugly.
Yeah.
So that the really chunky leader class one is the one that I want if I can ever find it. But, yeah, I like him in this movie. I do like that, someone you thought was going to be a good guy ends up being the bad guy kind of thing. And the sudden shock of him like gunning down Ironhide and everything.
With the acid rust blaster, that is a terrifying weapon for a Transformer. Like, he literally turned to rust.
You get one of those in Fall of Cybertron. It's called the Corrosive Slime Cannon.
Awesome. But yeah, that was a very shocking moment, especially since it just came out of nowhere, because right before that, Ironhide had a pretty big, awesome, action scene. No respect for collateral damage, by the way, just completely crushed a Decepticon and kicked him into a nearby store and just made it blow up so we can have explosions for the camera.
Yep. But the thing that's been controversial about this movie's finale for a while is some people like the sheer brutality of Sentinel being wounded and Prime being Prime has an opportunity to spare him or execute him, and he just guns him down in cold blood and executes him. And some people are like, "Oh, that was super badass of Prime to do that." Like, this version of Prime is cold-hearted and takes no prisoners. Like, holy shit. And then other people have kind of been like, that was uncharacteristically cruel of Prime to do that. There was no call for it. And then my favorite line in the movie has always been, like we said with Megatron, where he's like, "Where would you be without me, Prime?" And he's like, "Time to find out." And
The thing is, Megatron didn't earn that in these movies, though.
yeah, but it is cool to be. It is kind of cool for Prime to be like,
Yeah.
"You are such a pain in the ass, my guy." Like
I'm about to go
done
Sub-Zero
with
on you.
you.
I'm about to go Sub-Zero on you and
And
rip your spine out.
yeah, and it is super badass and like super cold of him to do that. But as you're familiar with, I've told you about this before. So I have a couple of Transformers novels that I need to read.
Yeah, and
Um,
Sideways here is mentioning in the original cut of the movie, Prime and Megatron actually teamed up against Sentinel, which I believe you told me that is how it happened in the book.
that is exactly what I'm
Yes.
about to go into.
Yes.
So there's a couple Transformers novels I have that I need to read. So first of all, there is a prequel novel to the first movie that I would like to read and share my thoughts on with you at some point.
If it
And
exists in
then
audiobook form, then I will give it a listen. If not, then I'll probably just let that one go because I don't like to read.
Well, I'll give you the summary after I read it. I've got I don't listen to audiobooks, so I'm reading it in paper.
Yeah, that's fine.
Um, and then I do have the novelization of Dark of the Moon, which was adapted from an earlier screenplay of the script. And so yes, in this earlier screenplay, the finale was that Prime and Megatron would team up against Sentinel, and then they would kind of agree to go their separate ways. And I'm really curious as to how that's done in the book because I do kind of like the idea of Prime and Megatron's rivalry is this thing where the two of them are just kind of obsessed with each other in a way, and like some series do this well. Like Armada does this really well of like Megatron cannot stand the idea of Optimus no longer being there to oppose him because the idea of having that rivalry is what gives him a feeling of purpose and drives him to continue his quest. And so it's like if their fight were to end, they don't know what they would do with themselves. And I think that the idea of being like, all right, we're gonna live and let live for today, so that we can have the satisfaction of fighting another day.
Yeah, it's
Um,
kind of like the ending of Return of Optimus Prime from G1. There will be no war today, Optimus. You've earned Galvatron's respect. It's one of those moments.
yeah, and like I said, I think Armada does that extremely well because their final fight between Prime and Megatron and Armada is this respectable, honorable duel. It's not a kind of thing of, oh, I need to stop you from committing evil. It's like, no, I'm going to give you the best fight I can out of respect for you. And I think that that's really, really compelling in Armada. Um, and so but in this final fight with Sentinel, like Sentinel is handing Prime his ass, like chops his arm off and everything. And Optimus would have lost had Megatron not intervened.
Indeed.
But then in so Sideways asking here if we think the Transformers Dark of the Moon game is canon. Yeah, I think it was written to be a canon prequel to the movie. Not that matters too much because the series loves to retcon itself, and like, I'll be honest, not really a whole lot happens in that game.
You can
But yeah,
you can check out his
the Dark of-
retrospectives over on his channel. I've tagged his channel in the description of the stream. So after you're done here, you can go check out his Transformers retrospective videos.
Yeah, I've done a video essay on all of the Transformers video games from the Armada game through all of the movie games and
War and Fall for Cybertron.
yeah, War for Cybertron, Fall of Cybertron, and I'm working on Rise of the Dark Spark right now.
And then we're gonna tag team Devastation when we get there.
Yeah, you and I are gonna do Devastation together, and it's gonna be awesome. But yeah, the Dark of the Moon game is a canon prequel to the movie, but that doesn't really mean a whole lot because not really a whole lot happens in that movie. And again, it's like, okay, we have what's his name, Stratosphere as a character in the Dark of the Moon game,
And he shows up in
later
Rise of the
appears
Beasts.
in Rise of the
Yeah.
Beasts, and it's like, is that canon? Doesn't really matter because, like, again, this series has very, very little regard for
Oh,
continuity.
and
but,
Rise of the Beasts and Bumblebee are a reboot anyway, so they're not in the same continuity. So that point
Yeah.
doesn't really matter. Like,
Yeah,
but
so-
it just means the Stratosphere did have some presence in the last decade before he just shows up out of nowhere in this movie.
but yeah, so I'm curious as to how the final fight with them is written in the book, and if the book has some of the same like petulant moments that the movies do. I will certainly let you know when I get around to reading it all. But
Yeah.
I do like the it's funny because like if I had a nickel for every time Optimus and Megatron had to team up to beat Sentinel Prime, I'd have 2 nickels, which is not a
Yeah,
lot, but it's weird that it happened twice.
The Chad Bayverse Sentinel Prime versus the Virgin TF1 Sentinel Prime.
Uh-huh.
That's
But
it.
I know you will have a lot to say about oh yeah, I love Warpath in the Dark of the Moon game. That is such a cool design. I want that as a Studio Series toy as well.
Um,
But not as badly as I want a War for Cybertron Warpath toy though. That I really want.
Crap, I'm out of rockets. All right.
Warpath is voiced by Jameson Price in this game. Did you know that?
Iskandar the Conqueror.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
He's so good. Like he elevates the like one-liner of a G1 Warpath so much in that game. But anyway, I know you're gonna have a lot to say about Sentinel in the final fight, so you can go ahead and go off.
All right, so my thing is not even just about Sentinel, but about Optimus as well. I will say, hearing Peter Cullen just constantly saying "kill and die" during Age of Extinction and the Last Night put me in a bad mood. I think that in Dark of the Moon, when him showing up that one time saying "we'll kill them all," that I feel like he's earned that one. Because him showing up after the Decepticons have taken over Chicago is exactly what he said would happen in Revenge of the Fallen when that government bureaucrat guy said, if we decide it's in our best interest for you to leave, will you leave peacefully? And he said, yeah, but ask yourself this. What if we leave and you're wrong? This is exactly that payoff. So him being like, I told you so, coming back and then just blitzing the Decepticons with his little strike team, I'm okay with him getting a bit gritty and violent this one time, but I don't feel like he should have carried that same attitude into the next one, because to me it kind of came across as a thing of, this is something that needs to be done because the humans couldn't handle themselves. I do get that in the next movie he was completely betrayed by the humans, which I got thoughts for that later, but him like axing Megatron and then shooting Sentinel in the back of the head, I honestly don't have that big a problem with it, given everything that led up to this. Because, again, Sentinel's the one that told him, he said it, you're the one who taught me freedom is the right of every sentient being. Megatron is just being a nuisance and embarrassing himself at this point. And if, like, Sentinel betrayed the Autobots and was to stop him from trying this again if Prime lets him live. And, again, you pretty much just destroyed Cybertron by collapsing the space bridge. There's not a home to go back to now, and it wouldn't be in this state if Sentinel hadn't opened the space bridge. Because it basically collapses into a black hole. At least that's what the animation looks like. So, yeah. Sentinel effectively destroyed Cybertron because Prime stopped him, or because the Autobots destroyed the space bridge, and of course Prime had to do that so he could save the humans. So, I feel like Prime is allowed to be a little bit gratuitously violent in this one scene. Again, I don't want that for every incarnation of Prime, but even if we look at others, there are times when he did have intent to completely just destroy his opponent. Like in the original Transformers movie, if Hot Rod hadn't gotten in the way, he would have killed Megatron. And if we look at Transformers Deviations, which is a like alternate telling of the scenes of the movie, we do see that when Megatron pulls the gun, Prime dodges the shot and then just proceeds to blow his head off. So yeah, like I believe that Prime could do that and would do that under certain circumstances. So I don't have as big a problem with that. But again, I feel like this is the only time he should have been that gratuitously violent, because hearing Peter Cullen say, I'll kill you, too much just puts you in a bad mood.
Yeah, well, are you aware that...
oh, yeah, he hated that line, yeah.
Yeah, he personally disapproves of that line where he's like, we'll kill them all. He's like, I didn't like that line. It felt like nasty to say, and I didn't feel like Prime would ever say that.
Yeah, because the whole thing about Prime is the advice he took from his brother was, be strong enough to be gentle. And that's Prime's whole thing, but now Prime is done being gentle. So again, that's just my personal thoughts on that. I really like Sentinel's design. His vehicle mode was okay. I love his robot mode design, and his weapon. He's got the big Thanos sword. Again, the Acid Rust Blaster is a terrifying weapon. And Leonard Nimoy always puts in a good performance. And I understand that was mostly just done as a throwback to the G1 movie where he voiced Galvatron. I still think he delivered a very good performance, though. But
Yeah, for sure.
that's pretty much just the extent of the thoughts that I have about that part of the fight. There's others that Starscream's death was absolutely embarrassing.
Killed by Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, like no, they did Starscream dirty in these movies. They did the Decepticons dirty in general, like the named ones.
Yeah. I
Like
mean, you have, again, just the laziness of like, oh yeah, we forgot to explain what happened to Barricade during the first movie. Do you think the fans? Okay, the fans are complaining about it, so we'll
oh
just squeeze him into
yeah.
Dark of the Moon and then unceremoniously kill him off in
Yeah,
that battle without giving him a line of dialogue.
and I mentioned it during when we were talking about the first movie, but forgot to bring it up for the second one. Scorponok out of nowhere to fight Jetfire at the very end of Revenge of the Fallen. Where have you been hiding for the past 2 years? Were you under the sand this whole time? You're just and you're suddenly in Egypt now when you were in like
Qatar.
Yeah, Qatar, which
Yeah.
I don't know where that actually is on a map. I'm not good at geography, but you're just suddenly in Egypt now. How'd you get here?
So Sideways says again, isn't it weird that in the Dark of the Moon game, Megatron beats Optimus in the truck form, but in the Dark of the Moon film, Megatron was lazy and weak and didn't do anything. Yeah, so in the second to last level of the Dark of the Moon game, you're playing as Megatron, and you do have like a little mini boss fight against Prime where he's got like an energy shield and everything, and he's got his mech tech weapons, and you are meant to beat him and like corner him in the cryo chamber with a Shockwave. Yeah, it is definitely like it's a bit of a suspension of disbelief of like, yeah, I don't think he is really prepared for this fight. Prime's kind of decked out and ready to go, but like I guess we needed to have Prime fight Shockwave, so whatever. Which that actually disappointed me tremendously about the Dark of the Moon game is that the only gameplay sequence of playing as Optimus Prime is that like little battle against Shockwave, and it's just very underwhelming.
All right. Chief Snake has to go now. All right. Be safe out there, Chief. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Um,
Yeah, so I
got some notes about Shockwave for the movie, but I'll save that for just a minute because it's connected to something else too.
Yeah, but I think on that note, I think I'm ready to move on to Age of Extinction.
Right.
I do not like Dark of the Moon, the film, and the game is fine. It's good for what it is, but if you've not played it, it's worth playing one time, but you're not really missing a whole lot.
If you can get it for $10 at GameStop or your local retro game store, then go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably going to be closer to like $15, but I think that's for sure worth it if you're a Transformers fan. Yeah. But it's definitely not as good as War of Cybertron or Fall of Cybertron.
All right. So I noticed that Shockwave and Dylan, the human villain of Dark of the Moon, have one thing in common. They both lost because they got something like put in front of their face. Like Dylan just so happenstancely got some newspapers blown at him, and he was blinded long enough for Sam to smack his leg with a rock. And then he just stood there and let Sam club him upside the head with that piece of concrete and knock him into the space pillar. Shockwave got blinded by a parachute just falling in front of his face. After a rewatch, I do still think that, at least action-wise, in terms of what we had with the Transformers, I do still think Dark of the Moon is the best of the first three, but the humans are insufferable. The Witwikis especially. But I can't separate them entirely because they are part of the movie. They are the main characters. So again, if we could get a good fan edit, then that would make this movie a lot better. But again, you can't just have that. You have to take the product as it is. So it's one of those things up to where I don't think any of the first three hold up 100% on their own, but I still pretty much have mostly the same opinion of Dark of the Moon that I had previously, except that I noticed the relationship flaws a lot more now. It's like all the humans are awful. Just give me the robots. I'm even okay with the military playing a bigger part in this because let's be real, if we did have some kind of like invasion going on, you bet the United States military would absolutely be out there. I will say a couple things that I didn't think were logical in the first movie, and even the later ones to a certain extent, is the military going behind like government sanctioned agents' backs and like performing these ops without any kind of repercussions, like breaking the chain of command. Like these guys are so court-martialed easily. It doesn't matter if you save the world, you're court-martialed. If this is any kind of realistic.
That's foreshadowing for the next movie for sure.
Yeah, Yeah, and at the end of Dark of the Moon, Prime says, "There will never come a day when we forsake Earth or its people." Literally the next movie.
Mm-hmm.
Segue into Age of Extinction, which I didn't get the chance to rewatch for this, but I do remember the Autobots are on the run because people in Earth's governments have teamed up with Lockdown, who is a Decepticon bounty hunter who can turn his face into a cannon. That's pretty cool. And the Autobots are being hunted and melted down to create Transformium, and they're creating their own Decepticons to use as a military force. And the new main character, Cade Yeager, I think is his name, is a mechanic like Megan was, and he does know a bit more about cars.
I'm an inventor.
An inventor, right? I forgot about that. He does actually get in there and do some fighting. Like he grabs a Cybertronian dagger that also happens to be a gun, which is actually a reference to how in the G1 series, Spike just flat out grabs Autobots blasters at different times. Like he grabbed Jazz's gun and is like, "I'll go out there fight the Decepticons myself." And in the Ultimate Doom, he got his hands on Optimus's blaster for like a second and was trying to shoot down Megatron's ship with it. So yeah, that's a reference over there, and it's all right. And we do actually see Prime have to go like full. Like he actually does end up killing a human because he's about to kill Cade, and the villain is played by Fraser Crane, by the way. I don't know if you watched the sitcom Frasier. You know, I used to watch that a lot when I was growing up, and I thought it was kind of funny that he was the villain in this.
I didn't realize that was him, but no, I'm not super familiar with that person.
Yeah, I don't know what the actor's name is. I know him as Frasier, and that's all I can call him. That's so I can understand why Prime would be done with humans after such a visceral betrayal. He's like, kind of like Sam in the previous one. I saved your world twice. And I'm like, you saved your world 3 times now, and they're literally killing your friends, melting them down for raw materials. I can understand why Prime will be fed up. I don't think that means Prime should go on the warpath and just kill everybody, but I definitely think you should be like, no, I'm leaving. The Cyberform seed, whatever it's called, that turns everything organic, that's a reference to the Key to Vector Sigma episode, where it turns out that on Earth, Vector Sigma transforms everything metal. Everything is chrome in the future, Squidward.
Yeah.
That's what I remember about Age of Extinction. Also, the Dinobots are there, and their designs are pretty awesome, even if they're kind of ugly. But they don't get any speaking roles, but I do think that they look awesome, if nothing else. I don't remember too much terribly else about the plot, but that honestly seems to be just the majority of what it was that I can remember. Like, he was harboring Optimus, so they're going after him now.
You okay if I go ahead and go off about?
Yeah. Go ahead. You got more to say.
So I actually, in spite of the fact that I would probably never rewatch Revenge of the Fallen or Dark of the Moon if I had the choice, I unironically really enjoy Age of Extinction. So, and I think the reason is like coming off of Dark of the Moon, it's slowly getting to the point where we are fixing some of the problems with this series. We haven't gone all the way there yet, but it was a breath of fresh air compared to what came before it. And it was, again, more colorful, didn't have the, like, cynical dark gray tone and, you know, visual style of Dark of the Moon. And it seems like it is self-aware of how over the top it is. Like, all of the things that are goofy and unbelievable about this movie, it seems to be at least that it's self-aware at this point and is very much like, oh yeah, we know that this movie is stupid and ridiculous, and we're just owning that about it. And I prefer that over them trying to act like it's high art. You know what I mean? And
you got Optimus Prime riding a Robo T-Rex into battle. That is pretty ridiculous, and it's awesome.
It's just like I said before, where it's like you have something that's so stupid that it wraps around to being awesome, and that's Age of Extinction to me.
Pretty sure I'm supposed to be finding the control panel, but I don't know where it is.
In terms of, to your right there, it's the same flashing. You can follow the energy conduits on the ground, and it'll guide you to where it is.
Is it this pulsing looking thing, right? Oh, I gotta shoot it.
You can follow the path, and it will take you to the panel.
Thought I had to interact with it. No, gotta shoot it or punch it.
So I do like the new characters in this one. I like Mark Wahlberg just fine. Like, he's not my favorite actor or anything, and he does have some bad dialogue in this movie and is a little bit awkward. But like, God, he's so much better than Shia LaBeouf, and like he's believable as like a corny action movie protagonist. And again, we're like a little bit there, a little bit closer in terms of like having a relatable protagonist. Like, better than Shia LaBeouf. He's just like he's a single dad looking out for his kids, trying to make a better world for them, and he's gonna sacrifice himself, risk his life to protect his family. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
better than what we had before, but not as good as what we will have later. So I like Mark Wahlberg. Like his daughter character is forgettable, and then the boyfriend character is also pretty forgettable, but they're inoffensive compared to what came before them.
With the exception of the Romeo Juliet law line, it's like, why did you need to say that? Like,
Yeah, that was just creepy that they wrote that into the movie. Like, why couldn't they have written both of them to have been 18?
yeah, and that's another thing where that's just the big question I have with a lot of it. It's whether or not it is objectively bad writing or objectively unbelievable or believable or whatever. It's like, what does this have to do with Transformers? Why is this in this movie specifically?
Yeah, so I would have preferred that creepiness to not been in there, but other than that, a lot of the other crude humor from the rest of the series is mercifully very absent from this movie. And then to talk about the Autobots themselves, like, I don't care for Prime's new design in this movie. I don't necessarily like the look of it, but the other Autobots in this movie are fucking cool because like you have Hound, who is literally just like
He's Cup. He should have been
he
Cup.
is. Yeah, but like
It's John Goodman as a Transformer.
it's fat John Goodman with a beard and like an ammo belt and like
Smoking a bullet cigar.
Yeah, it's so good.
It
dude.
is.
It's amazing.
Again, the only thing I wish is that it was Cup instead of Hound. Like, just the name. Just change the name and I'm happy. Or at least give him his hologram ability.
And then you have Rift, who is another like
he's a triple
we'll
changer.
Put this in here to make the comic book fans happy, but he is not only a triple changer
Except
that turns into a helicopter and a Bugatti Veyron of all cars, but he's voiced by Ken Watanabe, which is just it's so stupid that it ends up being cool. And then what's the other Autobot? Crosshairs.
Yeah, Crosshairs, and then you got the Dinobots. They didn't have the name trademark for Swoop, so they named the two-headed one Strafe instead.
Gotcha. Yeah, Crosshairs is cool. He's got like the dual-wielding submachine gun things going on. Like the Autobots in this movie are just like really, really over the top and cool designs. I even like Lockdown. His design, like the cannon coming out of his head. His face definitely has this weird, uncanny feeling to it, and this was kind of a trend of like, oh, you're gonna love this boss fight. This boss fight sucks, by the way.
I remember this game of difficulty last time. My comment on Lockdown. Did you ever watch Red vs. Blue?
Yeah.
Okay, so you remember that one line from like I think it was season 5 where Church was talking about how Caboose was in love with the tank. And he said, "I've had all the cross-species babies I can take. The last thing I need is Junior Caboose running around with a 120 millimeter cannon for a head." Yeah, I'm just like, yeah, Lockdown is that baby. He is the love child of Caboose and Sheila.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's it.
Also,
you're right.
Caboose's name is Michael J. Caboose. Michael J. Michael Bay. Illuminati confirmed.
Coincidence? I think not.
No, that's just one of those dumb, stupid jokes I like to make. But yeah, I thought the cannon face was kind of funny. One thing that bugs me about Drift, none of his toys were triple changers, and that's like all the appeal of a triple changer. The fact that you get a toy with 3 alt modes or 3 modes total.
Yeah, now there is actually another toy that turns into a Bugatti though.
Yeah, like you can get the separate alt modes, but not all three modes. And I guess it makes sense when the designs are so overly complex and stylized in this realistic art style. It makes sense that the toys can't always become what you want them to. Like in modern toys, probably could do it better, but back then I honestly feel like I feel like a lot of the toys were just kind of lazily done. Like. I don't think shell former was the right word, but I have seen some Transformers described as shell formers, where it's basically just, it all collapses into this one little compartment, or it stands up and it's transformed, you know.
Yeah, I still there's another toy that transformed into the Bugatti Veyron though, and it was the Cybertron smokescreen, which had two repaints. My brother had one of them because he was a big fan of that car, and I would like to get one of those myself at some point. Um, uh, Jurassic Harut says, "Happy 10th anniversary to Age of Extinction," and I'm like,
I'm old.
God, I feel
And
old.
Bree says face cannons are better than crotch cannons. I wholeheartedly agree. There was no reason for them to have those.
Yeah, I cannot believe that Age of Extinction is 10 years old. Oh my God, dude.
The 86 movie will be 40 years old in 2 years, and I know that we're celebrating the franchise 40th anniversary, but that one hits me particularly because that was the first Transformers thing I ever watched.
I hope that we get another theatrical run for the 86 movie for the 40th anniversary.
Oh, we will, and I'm ready for the toys. I'm ready for whatever toys they got for us.
I missed the theatrical limited screening of the movie for the 30th anniversary and the 35th anniversary. I missed both of them.
I think I went to both. I went to at least one of them with. Yeah, I went to both. Drove to hang out with some friends for one, and I was up visiting my brother out of state, and we went to visit. We went to see that while I was visiting him.
God, I want to see the 86 movie in theaters so bad, but hopefully we'll get there in two more years. 2 more years. Anyway, so again, yeah, the Dinobots, same thing. They are so stupid that they're awesome. Yeah, the 15th anniversary of Revenge of the Fallen as well. Good lord. That one I realized sooner though. But it seems like an eternity between Revenge of the Fallen and Age of Extinction. No, it doesn't feel like 5 years. So that's kind of where like the time dilation of you start getting older and time just starts passing even more rapidly as you get older, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dinobots are cool. So I mentioned earlier about like the Chinese thing from like, oh, we're gonna have the fight in Revenge of the Fallen take place in Hong Kong. So there was apparently some additional funding for Age of Extinction that had to come from a Chinese company or whatever.
Yeah.
And so there is a fight. The final battle in Age of Extinction does take place in China, but they had to show minimal collateral damage, and they had to make the Chinese people look as competent as possible. So there's a lot of like pro-China propaganda in some of the scenes in Age of Extinction.
Well, better than the just obvious product placement where he just picks up the Bud Light off the ground, bites the cap off of it, takes a sip, and then throws it down.
Yeah.
I noticed in the first 3 there was a lot of Cisco product placement, like the routers and all that. Like, I noticed that like very egregiously. It's like Cisco router over here, Cisco router over there.
Yeah, Sideways mentioning how the alt mode for Age of Extinction Galvatron could have easily been Motor Master by how when we saw the leaks and everything. It's like, yeah, why wouldn't we assume that was Motor Master? Like, it looks like it should be.
Yeah.
But then the movie's like, oh wait, it's Galvatron.
It might as well be Nemesis Prime at this point.
Again, like I gotta be honest, like even though this movie has a lot of flaws, I was still grinning from ear to ear in the theater. When it's like, oh, it's Galvatron now, and he's voiced by Frank Welker again, and I'm like, you know what? It's stupid, but I'm having a good time, you know. So I'll defend Age of Extinction for that, even though it has like again a completely nonsensical plot, as they all do. You've got like knockoff Jeff Bezos over here trying to recreate the Transformers for mass market or for defense contracts and stuff like that, and it just is the most sleazy capitalist thing ever. And that's funny that the actor they chose, who I don't remember the name, is like the most Jeff Bezos look-alike guy they could have possibly gone with.
When they're demonstrating the Transformium, it obligatory transforms into Rainbow Dash, because that's also Hasbro. Then also transforms into a gun, which I'm pretty sure is a playful jab at G1 Megatron. I don't think it was a Walther that it turned into, though. That would have been a nice touch if they had wanted to actually give us a little give us a little fan service with that. I don't think it was. I'm pretty sure it was just like a Glock or some other modern gun. But yeah, the P-38 would have been great.
Yep.
Without rewatching it, that's all I got for Age of Extinction. You haven't seen The Last Night, nor plan to. I can actually give a recap pretty well, even though I've seen it once. It was just so bad that it was memorably bad. So
yeah, I that's all I have to say about Age of Extinction. So you're actually good to go off about the last night. And I'm gonna grab some water really quick.
That's
Okay.
fine. Actually, I'm gonna see if I can fall through the floor here again. You remember I told you I was playing this during my first playthrough. I got clipped through the floor on this stage. Icon destroyed, like at the very beginning.
I've never seen that happen before.
Yeah, I took a picture of it, but I wasn't recording. I'm wondering if I can get it to happen again. Like, I think I hung around here too long and just got shot by one of the missiles. I was like standing right here at the edge.
Okay, yeah, I'll be right back. You're good to go off if you want.
Well, so the last night, it picks up a little bit after Age of Extinction. We start off in like the scrapyard where Cade Yeager works. He's basically living off the grid. He's got his daughter with him, and somehow there's baby Dinobots. That's not really ever explained. It's just one of those WTF moments. I don't even think that they got a toy for that, so I don't know why they're in the movie. Optimus, the last movie, Age of Extinction, ended with Optimus going back to Cybertron. I don't remember why he was. I think he was looking for someone, but then he ends up freezing out in space because I guess he never solved the icing problem. He needs to talk to Tony Stark about that. Ends up crashing back on Cybertron, which is like halfway destroyed, which is a callback to Dark of the Moon, because when you see Cybertron being pulled through the space bridge, you get half the planet, but then the other half gets sucked back into the wormhole, and it's destroyed basically completely. And then I'm out of ammo. And then Optimus meets the Space Witch Quintessa, who's the creator of the Transformers, which, yeah, that makes sense, because the Quintessons created the Transformers in the G1 continuity. That's fine. And then she says, hey, to rebuild Cybertron, you're going to destroy Earth for me. She puts a brand on him, and he renames himself Nemesis Prime. His eyes are glowing purple. And he's like, yes, my master, I will destroy the Earth for you. And I'm like, okay, that's a whole lot of dumb. So they go back to Earth, and they need to find the staff of Merlin. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, at the very beginning of the movie, because, we always get like a flashback before we get to the actual movie proper, we find out that the Transformers have been around since the medieval times, helping knights fight off invaders, and Merlin wasn't actually a real wizard. He was just teaming up with Transformers, and I think at least one of the Dinobots was there. He took the form of a dragon. I think it was Strafe, and he's like, yes, we're going to use you to help fight back these invaders. And Merlin was a charlatan, and his magic staff was actually a piece of Cybertronian tech. I don't remember why they actually needed it in the movie, like later on, but that is the plot MacGuffin that we need. And then Optimus shows back up to Earth, declares himself Nemesis Prime, is constantly shouting, "I'll kill you! I'll kill you!" It's like trying to murder Bumblebee. He's got Bumblebee on the ropes, and then suddenly Bumblebee's voice box just starts working again. And continuity error. Prime says, "I've not heard your voice since Cybertron," even though he literally talked at the end of the first movie, and they make mention of that in the second movie. But again, if we want to ignore the second and third movie, we can just skip straight ahead to Age of Extinction and not address that. But it turns out that Earth is actually Unicron. And that actually would have been a good way to do the whole Optimus has to fight Earth thing, because instead of just Quintessa being like, we're going to rebuild Cybertron, you're going to destroy Earth so that we can absorb its energy, it could have been a thing of Quintessa being like, hey, Earth is actually Unicron. Unicron's bad. Unicron is like universe-ending threat. We have to destroy it. It turns out, oh, it's accidentally Earth. So then Prime could be like, oh no, that's actually a conflict of interest, and that would be something interesting and relevant to Prime's character. Because Bumblebee is like, we don't want to hurt the humans, and Prime is like, but we have to destroy Unicron. So that would have created an interesting conflict if it was forced that way. Furthermore, I'm having trouble remembering his name. The guy who plays Hannibal, Anthony Hopkins. The only two good parts of the movie,
part of that movie,
and his butler Cogman, who is described to be a headmaster. Cogman is consistently funny. He's a human-sized transformer, and there's a moment where he is delivering a bunch of exposition. You hear like organ playing in the background. They pause and they turn. They see Cogman is actually over there playing the organ, and then they're like, "Stop! You're ruining the moment." He's like, "No, I'm enhancing the moment." That's actually kind of funny, and it turns out that the order that has been protecting the staff of Merlin is called the Witwickens, and we see a big family tree, and we see Sam Witwicky and his dad are on this family tree. That's why they were so important to history, because they are tied to ancient Cybertronians who have lived on Earth this whole time, and it's just a whole lot of nonsense that it doesn't work, the cinematography in the movie is terrible because there will be shots that jump cut to themselves, and like there's one scene where this guy's yelling at someone else, and then it jump cuts to the same scene, and we see the first guy shove the second one. But again, it's a jump cut. You could have made that shot like 5 seconds longer. Another thing, like this movie is really bad. Like I was at work a couple days ago, and I was just chatting with one of my other coworkers about rewatching the Bayformer films, and another one who was only there just to help for that day. He mentioned that he thought the Bayformer films were okay, and then before I got to say anything, he said, except The Last Night. The Last Night was terrible. And I was like, yes, thank you. It's unwatchable. Like, the cinematography is bad because they wanted to use IMAX cameras, and they kept, like, changing aspect ratios, and it's really distracting. Every single time that a Transformer transformed, they had to do this, like, parkour breakdance thing whenever they stand up. And, like, yeah, that is something that happens in, we're in War for Cybertron. Like, I transform, yeah, I do this, like, breakdance thing. That's different because it's a game and it has to have like scripted animations, but you don't have to do the fancy parkour whenever you're not in a battle, you know? And you also get like a bunch of clips from history where it shows the Autobots were helping out during World War II and things like that. And like Bumblebee couldn't assassinate Hitler. Like, yes, Bumblebee was here fighting against the Nazis, but he wasn't able to completely get the job done. They try to make it seem like it's so big and important, but it's just nothing. There's nothing of substance here.
Yeah, I remember when I first saw the trailer for, because I for those of you who don't know, in watching this, I have never actually seen The Last Night. I've only heard about things about it secondhand and seen reviews and stuff like that, and Caleb and I have talked about it quite a bit. And
I intend to watch this movie exactly one more time, and that's when I do a video retrospective on all the live action movies, and then I never plan to waste my time with that movie again because there's just nothing there.
Yeah, I've never watched it. I don't plan on it, but I remember when I first saw the trailer for it, I was like, oh yay, finally we're getting the fifth movie after Age of Extinction's cliffhanger. And I saw the trailer and I was like, I saw the whole like Knights theme and I was like,
Nemesis Prime.
This can't be real, dog. What? There ain't no way this is the route they're going with this, man. This is
and
this is not no.
And they left
real.
off with the cliffhanger that Unicron is actually Earth. We see Unicron's claws or spikes or whatever jumping up out of the ground, but that never goes anywhere. And nor does it deserve to because that last movie was awful. But
yeah, I think it was everybody was so disinterested in this movie. It like bombed at the box office.
They had like Bumblebee was conceived as a prequel originally. They decided to just go ahead and reboot the whole thing. For the better.
Well, as Sideways is pointing out here in the chat, apparently in 2015, Paramount and Hasbro were trying to make a Transformers cinematic universe, and you know, the idea of like a Hasbro cinematic universe where like, you know, G.I. Joe and Transformers and everything would have a movie continuity is a cool idea.
And we're starting to see that like, forming with Rise of the Beasts. We got the teaser for that.
Yeah, we'll get to that, but like this was the era of like, okay, the MCU is popular, so we have to chase quote unquote cinematic universes as hard as possible.
Because everyone was doing that at that point.
We've seen how that's kind of flopped with the DC universe, how like the best movies in that series are not part of the shared universe.
Shazam is like one of the best DC live action movies we've had in recent years.
Yeah, and how
Joker as well. So I've heard. I haven't actually watched it, but
Universal tried to do like the Dark Universe with all their old monster movie IPs.
You got one movie, and then the rest of it canned.
Yeah, The Mummy was so bad that they didn't even do the other movies, and they set up a bunch of stuff in that movie because they wanted to be the Avengers, and it didn't work out. And so, the idea of doing that with Transformers is like, okay, you're already on the fifth movie. And people are losing interest, and so like the idea of Bumblebee being like a prequel or being part of that shared universe is fine, but it's like I think what we got instead actually has way more potential than whatever they were going for when they like anything they would have made that would have been canon to The Last Night is inferior to what we actually got. I think the fact that The Last Night failed was a just saving throw for the franchise in terms of films. And I guess to kind of give my brief thoughts on it, because of what I've heard from it, like Anthony Hopkins being like again, we have award-winning actor Anthony Hopkins being over the top and goofy and just having a blast. And that's fun. And then I remember hearing that like there's a scene with like this like B plot of Decepticon characters who are just like underdeveloped and they're just like hanging around and they have
Oh yeah.
all this personality and
So
cool designs and they're really cool. And then they all die in the next scene.
yeah, somehow Galvatron got turned back into Megatron, voiced by Frank Welker, but he plays so little part in the movie that I can't even remember anything he did outside of maybe an action scene.
Yeah, and I hate his design too.
Yeah. So The Last Night was just awful, like all around. Like that's why.
Yeah.
Even though there are some elements of other movies that might be worse, as the sum of its parts, I feel like The Last Night is like objectively the worst of the live action films.
Yeah.
It's just unwatchable.
So I had the privilege of rewatching Bumblebee a couple of nights ago. I think it was on Thursday night, right before I saw TF1.
Right.
Would you like me to go off on that?
You can. I remember a little bit about Bumblebee. I remember the triple changes were cool, and someone, John Cena's character, finally pointed out, no one's going to question that they're called Decepticons? Does this sound like a good idea to you? I'm like, yes,
So
someone finally said it.
So my big problem with Bumblebee is that it is a terrible sequel to B-Movie. I mean, we're making a movie called Bumblebee in 2018 of all years, and Jerry Seinfeld's character is going to make an appearance? Like, what is going on here? Anyway, jokes aside.
Bree says The Last Night was the last straw.
It sure was, yeah. Anyway, so, jokes aside, most people really like this movie. I do as well. Again, Age of Extinction fixed a lot of things that were wrong with the Bayverse trilogy, and this movie fixes even more things. We're almost there. We're almost there to fixing all the problems.
The opening scene with the battle on Cybertron looked fantastic.
That opening scene on Cybertron is the coolest live action Transformers scene in the entire continuity, like in the entire franchise. It is the biggest apology to classic fans that you could have possibly have made, where they're like, we're going to make the coolest, most authentic G1 style representation of the battle on Cybertron that we possibly could, and fans ate that up. They loved it, and I agree. I think it's really sweet, and they are still to this day milking that scene. Every single canon character that appears on screen in that fight is getting a Studio Series toy, whether it's Brawn or
Wheeljack.
Yeah,
Wheeljack looked.
Soundwave.
Yeah, and you've heard my spill on Wheeljack from Rise of the Beasts. He looked fantastic in Bumblebee. He looks terrible in Rise of the Beasts. I hate what they did with him.
I don't hate him in Rise of the Beast, but I definitely see where you're coming from there.
Yeah, that's also just because Wheeljack is my favorite Autobot. So it's like we got this G1 accurate representation in live action, and then you gave us Steve Urkel. That should have been Perceptor if you're gonna do anybody from G1. That would have made more sense.
I know you can't see my camera now, so you'll have to see this on the uploaded version, but I'm gonna hold up one of my favorite characters to the camera right now. And we're going to talk about how he was done dirty in one of these movies. And
Scourge?
You'll see what I mean when we get to the...
Is it Scourge?
No, this is in TF1. But
right.
Anyway, so Bumblebee is, again, it is the most... It fixes so many of the problems that were wrong with the Bayverse in terms of, we no longer have shitty, shaky cam cinematography. We no longer have the hoorah, go military jingoism. We no longer have the shitty protagonist. We no longer have the crude humor. We have, good cinematography. We have a good protagonist. Charlie is a likable character with relatable problems. That she doesn't come across as whiny. I do have a little bit of a problem with her mom. Her mom was a bit irritating to me on this rewatch. But I think that the drama of stuff happened with her dad, and she's still grieving, and she doesn't agree with or respect the way that her mom has chosen to move on, and it's causing a divide in the family, and she's dealing with teenage angst. like really great character, really really well written. Can't complain about that at all. Much much better than Shia LaBeouf's character, and her moments of awkwardness are just because she's like going through her teenage years and dealing with peer pressure and dealing with her trauma and stuff, and not because she's just a spoiled, awkward brat. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And Bumblebee, it's really funny because I saw it with this movie in the theater with two friends, and one of them made the comment where he said, "This was a great horse girl movie."
But the horse is a giant robot.
Yeah, and so if you know what I mean, there's a certain like archetype of a story that is like the girl and her horse, and it's like it doesn't necessarily have to be a horse, but it's like horse in quotes, where it's like it's some kind of like mystical companion thing where you go through all the motions. Like she's frustrated with her life, she has this feeling of longing and trying to fill the void in her life, and she meets the mystical companion. You have like it can't communicate with her, but it gives her this really powerful sense of freedom. And
he'll play Stan Bush for you at a moment's notice.
yeah, and it um it's this like it can't talk to her, but it's like playful, and she's trying to teach it how to blend in and everything, and it's like it's kind of like the Iron Giant, or I think of another example. um
I feel like, yeah, I did have some notes about the first Bayverse film. They tried to do like that awkward scene from the Iron Giant where the giant's hand is just like crawling around the house and Sam's trying to hide things.
uh-huh.
But we're past that, so I'll save that for my big full video. 5 years
Yeah,
down the
but
line.
but again, Bumblebee is like it hits every single story beat of that type of movie where it's like, she has the relationship with the mystical animal thing, and then it gets like the bad guys want to take it away from her, and then they capture it, and they like maybe experiment on it, and he's in pain, and she's gotta like get him back, and then they work together to beat the bad guys, and in the end it's like, okay, I've got to let you go now, I can't keep you forever, and they have like a very heartfelt goodbye and everything, and it's like it's that storyline beat for beat, but it's great. It's really well done, and it fits the Transformers template um, pretty well, while also being a faithful G1 um, throwback with good cinematography, good character design, good action, um, better written characters. Um, it it has none of the negative aspects of the rest of the live action movies, while also being like an admittedly kind of formulaic story that's done well and can reach a wider audience than what we had before. It doesn't have to rely on a bunch of like sci-fi mumbo jumbo. It's a bunch of just like um more relatable, more normal story beats. It's
um,
much more wholesome, much more down to earth, much more relatable.
Gratuitous
And
celebrity cameo aside, yeah,
what with John Cena?
yeah.
Yeah, I had actually forgotten that John Cena was the military guy in this movie until this rewatch, and I I don't know that I really. I mean, John Cena is a decent actor because like wrestling
Acting.
is a basically a type of theater with an extreme amount of athleticism that goes with it. So he already kind of has acting skills just from that. But I don't know that I necessarily like him as an actor, but it kind of just reminds me of like if this were the 80s, this would have been Arnold Schwarzenegger or Hulk Hogan.
All right, yeah,
Um,
that's fair. That's fair.
and so I'm like, I guess I feel the way about John Cena that somebody would have felt about like Schwarzenegger in the 80s kind of thing.
Yeah.
So and I do like the line you mentioned of like where he's like, look, they call themselves Decepticons, and you won't trust them. I did think that was pretty funny. And then there's some more like kind of not quite fourth wall jokes, but there's some other references like that in TF1 then uh, that are of a similar level of self awareness there. But I have some friends that so I have a friend in the cosplay community that lives in Florida, who is a big Transformers comics fan, almost went to a Transformers convention with her.
I remember you
Um,
talking about that a couple years back.
yeah, and she is a massive fan of the Bumblebee movie. But and it's funny about talking about the last night. She will only watch the last night while intoxicated, which I find to be pretty funny. Um, but she loves the Bumblebee movie. I remember her and I talking about it when it first came out in theaters, and I get it. It's a good movie. Again, I think that I do. I actually do after rewatching both this and Rise of the Beast, because I know last year we talked about Rise of the Beast. I was torn on which one I thought was better, and I think after this rewatch, I do think Rise of the Beast is better. Um, but that might be personal preference. Um, the
From what I
story in
recall,
Bumblebee,
Rise of the Beasts does more with Transformers lore than Bumblebee did, but that's fine because Bumblebee is meant to be the reboot starting point. So you didn't really have to like bog it down with references and throwbacks, other than that one fantastic Cybertron scene. Because like
yeah,
in the next one, we get Unicron and Warp Keys and uh, even like going back to the first Bayverse film, we got original piece of lore, the Allspark, which would go on to be in other pieces of media, but that was the most that we got in terms of like extra Transformers lore, and everything that came after that that was just shoehorned in was just there for brownie points. Like again, they would name drop Seekers or pretend, or they don't even name drop Pretenders, but that's apparently what Alice is classified as, Space Bridge and Sentinel Prime and things like that.
yeah.
But
Which I
a
really
lot of it feels inauthentic because it didn't. I don't want to say it didn't earn the use of those, but they're not using them to their fullest extent in the way that fans would want them to. But whereas Bumblebee is just a thing about the two goofballs of their different, we got one human, one robot, and again, it is the companionship and is the start of the reboot, so it's allowed to be a little more laid back, a little more chill.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it was a huge breath of fresh air compared to what came before it, and much in the same way, like I said, incremental progress of I think Age of Extinction fixed some things that were wrong with the three movies that came before it, and Bumblebee fixes even more of what was wrong with Age of Extinction, and in the Last Night by extension, and um, the yeah, I don't know. It was good. It was just fine. The I had another point there, and I'm trying to remember what it was.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, yeah. The whether or not it has any continuity with the other Bayverse movies. Again, it's like I tried to prevent us from getting lost in the forest looking at trees with this, but like the uh the continuity between the reboot Bumblebee and Rise of the Beast versus the continuity of the Bayverse films is like it's not even worth considering because the Bayverse movies already retconned themselves in each entry. They were never concerned about plot. They were never concerned about continuity. So like the fact that Bumblebee has kind of the same design that he would have in the Bayverse movies is just kind of like an aesthetic thing so you recognize him, and the fact that he turns back into the 74 Camaro at the end of Bumblebee is like, you could have that be a tie-in, or I really equate it to like how they did with the X-Men movies, where you had the original trilogy and then you had First Class, and First Class started an entirely separate timeline but had the same actors,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of what I equate Bumblebee and Rise of the Beast to in terms of like this timeline schism of we are now in a new timeline. There's no going back, and just because things maybe look similar or there's some overlapping designs or overlapping characters, just don't be concerned with continuity or anything like that
Because it's Transformers and they have stuck with the same designs for countless years, and like a lot of the new stuff is G1 inspired in design, but it's not the same G1 cartoon or comic continuity.
yeah.
So like that's just par for the
Um,
course at this point.
uh, Jurassic Horror as well asked which you think
Bring
needs
back
to be brought back, whether the Bayverse or 2D animation.
2D animation
Um,
easily. Studio Trigger, please
yeah.
do it.
So, and we'll talk about this when we talk about TF1, but I really feel like TF1 is is the Into the Spider-Verse of Transformers movies in many more ways than one, no pun intended. Um, and But I would love to see something in the style of Transformers animated again,
Yes.
or I would like to see something with a more anime style again, like Armada or like
Robots in Disguise
um,
2001.
yeah. Anyway, um, do you have anything else to add about Bumblebee, or do you want to move on to Rise of the Beast?
That's all I can remember about Bumblebee off the top of my head. I did think that it was a kind of a cozy feel-good movie in a lot of ways, from what I remember. I do remember Rise of the Beasts more well because that is a little more recent. So we can move on to that one if you're ready.
Yeah, and thankfully we did our live stream recap on that movie right after we saw it. So there's a whole video you can check out on. I think it's actually on my Zoids channel. I don't think it's on my main channel.
It's on your
It's
Zoids
on
channel, and I have the VOD still uploaded to YouTube over here, and I have listened to that on occasion to try to catch back up with things. So that one's a
Yeah, I
little more fresh.
also I did rewatch Rise of the Beast, and I listened to I listened to our video from that. Yeah, if you guys want to hear a more in depth recap of our thoughts on Rise of the Beast right after we got out of the theater last year, you can either again watch the VOD over on his channel, or you can watch the edited video on Starcross Soul Zoids. Um,
I guess that's your way of saying your opinion hasn't really changed too much since then.
Oh no, yeah, it hasn't. It hasn't actually. I do think much of the same as I did when I first saw it, but I do kind of want to summarize my
Yeah.
thoughts for those listening now, and because I have thought about like one or two little things I didn't mention last time that are worth appreciating. Um, so it is, I think, the best live action movie. I think it fixes pretty much everything that doesn't work about the Bayverse movies. So you have, in my opinion, the best human characters in the series. We finally have arrived at Noah Diaz, who, in my opinion, is the best protagonist because he's not white. He is in a socioeconomically disadvantageous position where he is trying to scrape by, living in the projects, trying to take care of his mom and his little brother. He was in the military. We don't know the full story behind what happened there, but not only did the military screw him over, which is an interesting bit of political commentary, but it also is
pretty much the exact opposite of the whole gung ho pro military attitude that the Bayverse films had. It's like the exact opposite.
And it sets a precedent for him to be like brave and courageous and have some affinity for technology and radios and stuff like that.
He was a communications officer, I think, or am I misremembering?
Yeah, he was a radio comms technician,
right,
and so like there's a precedent for him having some compatibility with the Autobots
and knowing how to like hack radio devices and things like that, which we see him tinkering with a couple times throughout the movie, from what I recall.
Yeah, so like he's a protagonist that is actually useful and competent compared to Shia LaBeouf's character.
Yeah, and that actually is kind of a callback to G1 again. Noah is a better Witwicky than Sam is because if you go back to the G1, at least the cartoons, and I'm pretty sure the comics too, like Sparkplug and Spike, they know how to tinker with machines. There's times when the Autobots will be banged up from a big battle and they're over there helping repair them alongside Ratchet. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, the humans are actually useful because they know how to work with machines. And they're not entirely saving the day, they're just there for support, and that is great. That's what we need the humans to be, not in the spotlight. And because Noah does get us closer to that, but again, he is still the audience surrogate. And I feel like just me personally, just because I don't think humans should ever be the main characters of Transformers, he does take up a bit... Oh, I just got run over by a train. He does take up a bit too much screen time for my personal preferences, but he is infinitely preferable to Shia LaBeouf's character after a rewatch. I'm just like, wow, Sam was insufferable. I don't remember it being this bad.
Yeah, and again, luckily you always have TF1 to go back to now as like the animated Transformers movie with no humans.
And as far as I know, it is in continuity with these, and it's one of those things up to where it's in the live action canon, but it itself is not live action. It's like Disney's Lion King reboot.
But like I said, it's like you have that movie now, so you don't have that necessarily that sense of longing for like, God, I wish there were no humans here kind of
right?
thing. But like, and then, like I said last year, it's like even though even if it is your preference to not have human characters in these movies, if they're going to have them
They
anyway,
need to be good.
they might as well be good. And I think that again, Noah Diaz is by like head and shoulders the best live action Transformers protagonist out of any of them. I think he's a great character. Um, the girl that's with him, Elena, I'm a little bit less impressed by. Like I didn't get a sense of her character until like 2/3 of the way in the movie, but I still think she is also head and shoulders better than what came before her. And then like the Transformers characters themselves, like Prime has a very interesting character arc in this movie where he's a little bit more brash and reckless and has a bit of a chip on his shoulder.
He does still say
Um,
kill a few too many times for my comfort, but I do get where he is a little less experienced. So
yeah, I
he's
think that
yeah.
that comes from a sense of like juvenile frustration more so than it does like he is grizzled and cynical, you know.
Yeah, you said the Transformers animated Prime reminds you a lot of that. I think because or no, I said that. You said it was kind of like the War for Cybertron one, where he is not quite a Prime yet in War for Cybertron, and he's got to learn how to be a Prime. But
Oh, it actually reminded me more of Energon Prime because
okay,
Energon Prime is kind of bitter and has a bit of a chip on his shoulder and is a little bit harder around the edges than most of the other primes because like TF animated Prime is juvenile and inexperienced, but he never loses his temper. He's always very cool headed. And then Prime and War for Cybertron in the game you're playing right now is literally just G1 Prime. Like you put Peter Cullen in the sound booth, you didn't give him any direction, so he's gonna play Prime the same way he's always played him. So
and,
he's very
yeah, I don't. And you made the point. I don't remember if it was just during our conversations or our previous stream or during your review, but it was. This is basically G1 Prime when he's not Prime yet. He's not called Prime when you start the game. So how is he already this good, charismatic leader if he wasn't the leader beforehand? Zeta Prime was a leader before Optimus. So that's a criticism of the game itself. But I do get what you're saying. It's Peter Cullen being
yeah.
the Optimus we love, but it doesn't make too much sense for him to be there already. He could have afforded
And
to be
that
just a little bit more naive, you know.
that was only a criticism that I realized with Rise of the Beast in context because I realized that um
Optimus Primal was named for Optimus Prime in his Tales of Heroism, and yet he's not exactly what Primal thought he should have been. So it's kind of like Primal is helping Optimus discover the hero he's supposed to be. That's kind of like
yeah,
what we got out of the movie, and that is a point
that's
we covered
exactly
last
right.
time. Yeah,
That's exactly right. And then, but it was also like from like a movie making standpoint, like give Peter Cullen some direction in the booth there, like get some emotion out of him. Because again, in War for Cybertron, he's playing the character as he's always played him, and I think that's fine to an extent because Peter Cullen has a better. It's one of those roles that like he knows this character best. He is an authority on how this character should be written and played. It's like we said, Tom Kenny like for SpongeBob, or Charles Martinet for Mario. It's like he is. You could get other people to play the character, and that's fine. And there have been many people who have done fantastic um,
Optimus
voice
Primes and
acting
Megatrons. Yeah,
performances as Prime, but when you have Peter Cullen doing it, he is an authority on how the character should be played, and so you kind of just let him do his thing. But in Rise of the Beast, it's like they put a lot of like digital effects on his voice to make him sound like more loud and booming and have like that mechanical echo to his voice in Rise of the Beast.
yeah.
And it might have also been because like Peter Cullen's getting old. Like the dude just turned 80 this year. Um, so he may not be able to emote as hard as he used to, but like these movies I think take a lot out of him, and he was really giving it his all in this movie. But I think again you had like the ADR director in there being like, all right, you got to sound angry, you got to give me a good grunt, you got to tell me how much you want to smash in Scourge's face. And I appreciate how much more you could do with Prime's character with some direction in the sound booth as opposed to just letting him do his own thing. Um, but so to kind of move on, Yeah, my only gripes with Rise of the Beast, as we talked about in the video, is that um, Unicron is kind of a weird thing to introduce into this story
Yeah,
at this point in time.
it's like bringing in Thanos during like the second MCU movie, like not even the second Avengers movie, but the second MCU movie. Period.
Yeah, and and it actually, funny enough, it actually reminds me about how. Did you ever see the Green Lantern movie?
I did, and there I feel like there's a lot of aspects about that movie to enjoy as someone who really likes the Green Lantern comics.
So
It just
it's kind
deserves
of
to
like how
be
they handle
a better movie.
the villain in that movie,
Uh,
or like the villain in that.
Parallax and Sinestro, yeah.
Yeah, like you have this like galactic threat, and you're introducing him as your like first antagonist. It's a little bit like
That was a whole arc that actually culminated in Hal Jordan dying in the comics and then having to be resurrected before the Blackest Night. And like Parallax was meant to be this huge, huge thing, and he's
yeah.
just kind of there. It's kind of like not as big, but in the Iron Man movie, Ironmonger, Obadiah Stane, that's supposed to be after a culmination of years and years and several countless issues beforehand, and you're just gonna make him the villain in the first movie. Just
But I didn't want to get on a huge tangent about that, but it reminded me Parallax and Green Lantern reminded me a lot of how they handled Unicron in this, and not to say that Unicron is like not going to reappear in this franchise.
oh, he absolutely
But
is.
I just thought it was weird that they started with him, and it has some weird consequences. And then the other big criticism of Rise of the Beast is that, again, all the marketing around the movie, all the theming is around
The Maximals.
around the Beast Transformers.
Cheetor
and
gets
they
like
just don't
3
do
lines,
anything.
and Rhinox gets none.
Yeah, they don't do anything.
And again, there's no Rat
They
Trap. Like Rat Trap and RC should have had a moment because of that quote from Beast Wars. One of the name of my great aunt RC is going on here.
Yeah, I remember you saying that in the original video.
Although apparently
But
there was a comic where RC and Rat Trap are hanging out, and RC is his aunt and like his babysitter. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. It's a manga or something.
So like I don't think we even ever get to see the heck is the name of the bird?
Air
Airazor. We never even get to see her robot mode ever.
I don't think we do. Like thinking back
you
now,
don't. She never transforms.
huh?
And I do like the drama with the scene with when she gets corrupted by Scourge's Dark Energon, and like it was really compelling when again, it's like we said, a lot of the values that Optimus holds as a leader, he like unintentionally was inspired by Primal, who is inspired by him. So it's like this weird like time recursive loop thing of like you it's an Eddie Arthur situation of like
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
one perpetuates the existence of the other kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was cool. I liked that part about it. And then like I said, I was telling my wife and our best friend about TF1 yesterday, and I was talking about how, and I guess this segues into a little bit about what I think about TF1, but one of my only criticisms of TF1 is that they went with this like Hollywood A-list celebrity voice cast, and I think that is robbing like voice actors
Yes.
of good roles. And I was making the case that like not only are these A-list actors like needlessly expensive, and they are taking up a significant portion of the budget for these animated movies where that money can go towards an otherwise underpaid voice actor or to the animators to be able to finish a scene or do whatever. I just think that like the sort of cult of celebrity we have around Hollywood actors is very needless, and we shouldn't have that in our animated movies. But
I absolutely
I was
agree,
thinking that-
and like it's kind of the same thing that happened with the Mario movie. Like everyone's like, "Oh, Jack Black is Bowser." Yes, he killed it as Bowser, but that led to him being cast as Steve in the Minecraft movie, and the Minecraft movie looks like it's not going to be very good because they learned the wrong lesson from the Mario movie. But
yeah, and then and that doesn't even begin to touch on Chris Pratt as Mario and how everybody was making memes about that and everything.
yeah, and
But,
I will say I was hesitant about Chris Hemsworth as Orion Pax. I will say he actually delivered better than I thought he was going to.
Yeah, we'll get to that,
Yeah.
but the main reason I bring that up is because to focus on Rise of the
Oh,
Beast,
Peter Dinklage, Scourge.
Peter Dinklage as Scourge,
Yes.
um, it's not good. Like, like I know I was kind of hard on him last time, but like in rewatching, I'm like, man, is he awkward? Like, if you had, I'm trying to think of like an anime voice. If you had like Crispin Freeman doing this voice, it would have been better.
Dude, don't do that. Don't give me hope.
Yeah, like
Don't give me ideas.
if you had or
Well,
even Jameson Price
is
or
Crispin Freeman doing his Kiriko Tamine voice or doing his Sundowner voice from Metal Gear Rising?
even like as Alucard's
Alucard.
voice. Yeah. Like any anime voice actor could have done a better job than Peter Dinklage did in that role. It just it and I hate I'm not trying to talk shit about Peter Dinklage, but like it's just an example of different professionals have different training and different qualifications because they have different skills.
Right.
Voice actors have a different skill set um, than screen actors. And
Yeah,
so,
like Bree personally hates The Rock as an actor, but thinks he's an okay voice actor. Like in Moana, he did a really good job as Maui.
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That was a good point. So that's my big thing about Rise of the Beast. I do think it's the best movie. It has the best, most comprehensible action and choreography, and everything is like full frame, and you get these big wide shots of all this action. Where the final battle in Rise of the Beast, like everything is on screen, it's comprehensible, and it looks fucking cool. It's probably my favorite action set piece in the entire live action series. And something else I noticed is like even like the little like there are little blaster projectiles in the new continuity are actually like Star Wars-esque like blaster bolts. You can actually see them travel through the air
Instead of just being
whereas
like bullets in the Bayverse.
yeah, because like I think back to the first Bayverse movie where it's like the Prime and Megatron fight where Prime shoots Megatron in like the shoulder, and you don't see the projectile at all. You just see like sparks flying off of him, and then again Megatron
It's
like
a hit
clasps
scan
his
weapon.
hands together, fusion cannon, and then hard cut to Prime flying backwards, and it's like there's a lack of like texture in this fight choreography, and so all of that is very much resolved in
Rise of the
Rise of the
Beast.
Beast.
Yeah.
And like I said, all the Terracons have these awesome designs. Battle Trap is one of the coolest live action designs.
Glad to say they brought back Nightbird, who was very underutilized in G1, despite them leaving off on a big hint that she might come back later, but she didn't. So, yeah, the season 1 of G1 had that problem where they would introduce a villain, have them be relevant for a couple episodes, and then just not resolve everything with them.
What's that?
Nightbird. She was in Rise of the Beasts, and she originates from G1 as like a robotic ninja drone thing that was created by humans, and then it was taken over by Decepticons, and that's how she became a relevant character in other continuities.
Yeah.
So, died. But, yeah, I think the Terracons had some really good designs. I do think that because of we had Scourge in this one being one of Unicron's heralds, that means we're almost certainly going to get Cyclonus whenever Unicron shows back up. And they might actually do a thing in this continuity where Galvatron's a separate character, kind of similar to how they do in some of the comics. Jurassic is asking what's worse: Velma, Santa Eve, Thor: Love and Thunder, Eternals, Alone in the Dark, Son of the Mask, Battlefield Earth, Russian Guardians, Fast 9. I have not seen any of those except for Son of the Mask, so I'm going to say that's the worst one.
I'm tempted to say that's one of the worst as well. Piranha 2 is not done by Joe Dante, was it?
I don't know. I don't know anything about the Piranha movies.
Battlefield Earth is a so bad it's good movie though, so you can have a good laugh at that one.
Yeah, you can laugh at John Travolta a little bit.
Yeah,
I liked him in Pulp Fiction and Face Off.
Is Alone in the Dark Uwe Boll?
Yes,
Alone
it
in the
is.
Dark is one of the.
If
that's one of the Uwe Boll ones. I'm going with that one.
I watched a Nostalgia Critic review of that one a long time ago.
What, Alone in the Dark?
Yeah.
I think I've actually seen that movie. But yeah, Uwe Boll is so Careful, you can't talk shit about him, or he'll challenge you to a boxing match.
I think that's hilarious. Like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, come fight me. Come fist fight me. Do it. I'll lose, but still do it.
Yeah, Sideswipe sharing my sentiment here about Battle Trap. Yeah, the design is fucking sick. And Primal bashing in his head with his own wrecking ball is just very satisfying in that fight.
Piranha 2 was James Cameron.
No way. That's amazing. Cuz that's so funny to me cuz the first Piranha movie is like, "Hey, we want to make a low budget Jaws knockoff. Can I make it funny?" And then you get Joe Dante making Piranha and
I don't know if you saw that on my screen, but I just took out like 5 aerial bots with a single blast from the Nucleon fusion cannon.
I'm sure I'll see it in a second because I'm a few seconds behind.
All that splash damage.
Yeah, you're on the turret now.
This is the Doomsday Bazooka I wish Megatron's primary weapon was.
Yeah.
It's the BFG of Transformers.
The riot cannon in Fall of Cybertron does have a little bit more consistent damage spread than the fusion cannon in this game does. So you'll have that power trip in the next game for sure.
Yes. In due time.
All right.
In due time.
You ready to talk about TF1?
Yes.
Yeah, a little under an hour left, so.
All right, so TF1, I was not expecting to get that emotional. Easily the best Transformers movie since '86. Like no comparison. It's not even to me. There's no question about it.
I do agree. Although, like I said,
The
I
celebrity
do
voice acting. You do defend what?
I do defend Bumblebee and Rise of the Beast.
Oh yeah. I enjoyed those movies. This one was just better.
Yeah, I'm so giddy even now about TF1 that I am probably going to go see it again.
I absolutely, like, me and Brie are going to go see it again. Don't know when. It'll probably be after Comic-Con High. But we are absolutely going to see it again before it's out of theaters. And the second that it is available on home media, I'm buying it. And I'm making an AMV or two because it's been actually probably a decade since I made one, and it's long overdue, and my brain juices are cooking up music video ideas for like that movie on its own. If not like a full AMV, just like a little crack edit here or there with some moments my brain cooked up, and I love it. I haven't felt this giddy about a Transformers movie in a long time. So I'm so happy with what we got, and I'm dead again.
Yeah. Yeah, I think and again because my wife and our friend are very much into animation, I think describing the movie to them yesterday, I think I've sold them on them wanting to go see it, and they don't go to the movies all that often, so I'm very much looking forward to the idea that they may want to see this with me, and I'm just super looking forward to like hearing what they have to say as like. They're not Transformers fans, but they know I care about the franchise.
And this movie is fully accessible to people who have never seen Transformers before. I can think of like
an origin story. It sure is.
I can think of like one or two references that might get lost on them or just not go fully appreciated. But on the whole, it's a very accessible movie. Sideways
very accessible origin story. But was also made with so much love and reverence for the rest of the franchise.
I'm sitting there as I'm seeing the various Autobots and Decepticons in the background that have no lines. I'm over there naming them off, and we got so many of the Seekers. I told you before, the Seekers are like some of my favorites, and we got all of them. And a couple of them.
Looking at the miners, it's like, oh my god, look, there's Sideswipe,
there's Brawl, there's Prowl. Another thing I noticed was that some of the Seekers got some unique designs. Like I think it was Thundercracker got some like aviator shades instead of just Starscream eyes, and I saw Slipstream in there too. Which I'm not gonna say she's completely obscure, but she's like the only well-known like female Seeker and one of the few female Decepticons.
I noticed that.
Sideways says that apparently Transformers 1, or at least the original version, was pitched back in 2015, but during because of the writer's strike back then, it was shelved, and then we got the one we got today, which I'm happy with the one we got today, and I don't know if... what was the one pitched back then going to be animated too? Because if it wasn't, then I probably wouldn't have liked it as much, because, like, again, I know this is supposed to be in the live-action canon, but it still was fully animated because, Cybertron.
Yeah, and I'll be real. I don't care if it's canon with anything else
It's
because
great on its own.
it's great on its own. I
And
actually don't even care if it gets a sequel,
I would love for it to,
because
but I feel like it's kind of the way you described Fall of Cybertron. It could be a logical but non-committal prequel to G1. Like honestly, you
yeah,
could watch TF1, then go watch TF86, like seamlessly almost.
you could, yeah. But I like I said, I think the best way to describe this movie is it is the TF1 is the Into the Spider-Verse of Transformers movies, where like if you were fatigued by all the things that like from an adaptational standpoint they weren't getting right about the live action stuff, this is your
Your breath of
this is
fresh air.
your
This
love
is
letter
yeah.
to the fans. This is your love letter to the comics. This is your love letter to animation. Um, and it felt really good. And then from a visual standpoint, it was good. It wasn't quite as like beautiful and pretty as I thought it was going to be, although the surface of Cybertron looked really cool. The character designs I was kind of iffy on at first, but they did grow on me as especially as the characters'
Yeah.
designs change over the course of the movie.
The trailers did not do the actual movie justice in terms of animation, and the art style looks better in motion than it does in stills, which is a lot
Yeah,
of what we see, like in Facebook advertising and such. Am I stuck? Okay,
and I
there we
will
go.
say the part of the visuals that I don't like, or that I wasn't completely sold on, was the fact that the way the characters move sometimes has this very like Pixar quality to it, where overall the movement was really cool, and some of the choreography with like how they transform and how they move and everything has this level of fluidity that is really cool. And it's like they can transform in like all types of different positions, and they can like halfway transform. Like I think the one part where
Garok.
like Megatron and Starscream's scuffle, where like D16 like half converts his leg and just kicks the shit out of Starscream.
Yeah.
Or like
Bumblebee trying to be whatever his name is. I'm just gonna call him Bumblebee because that's what he is.
mhm,
He's like going down the hill, gets most of the way into car mode, but he can't get wheels, and then his arms come out. He's just running, like with his arms
yeah,
and legs in car mode. That's pretty
yeah.
funny.
And I think that's really cool because it's like, okay, I don't have to be completely in one mode or the other. I can like halfway transform a limb and make a battering ram kind of thing, and
They
that's
can
that's a cool idea.
they can all Gerwalk
Um,
themselves.
it shows this idea that like they are in complete control of how to use their bodies, how to like implement this feature and like do whatever they want, kind of. And it just has this sense of like freedom of movement, where it's like this is them on their home planet, able to move in any which way they want. And it looks cool, but I will say that with the caveat of like I said, the sort of like Pixar-ness of the way they moved sometimes clashed with comprehensibility, where there's a couple of scenes, particularly when the Cybertronian High Guard gets ambushed by Sentinel Prime's guys. That battle is a very incomprehensible, and it might be that
Yeah,
way deliberately. It might be like deliberately like disorienting.
yeah, because like it's whenever Bumblebee and Optimus got smacked in the face, like the camera glitched out. Actually, I think that was when they got brought to the High Guard. But yeah, it was that's when the shaky cam I feel like was at its worst, which they didn't have too much shaky cam throughout the whole movie. It was just one or two particular scenes, and that could have been okay. Am I stuck? Why do I keep like getting caught on things and like stuck in free fall? Um, but I agree that there was a couple moments that definitely were kind of incomprehensible to look at. That was one of them. Uh, yeah, as we've already established, spoilers by now, Sentinel Prime is the bad guy in this film. Uh,
Yeah, it's almost to the point where I don't want to call him Sentinel Prime anymore
because he's
because he's
not a
not.
Prime.
Yeah, it's like calling him Sentinel Prime sounds dirty. Like I
Yeah,
just want to call him Sentinel because well, you don't deserve that title, my guy.
Sentinel not Prime.
Um,
That's what I've been calling him. The Virgin Sentinel
yeah,
not Prime.
yeah,
Uh,
and uh, yeah. So the idea that like the Cybertronians are at war with the Quintessons is really cool.
so this says to
Because
me that
I
it's like the early days of Cybertron then, because if we're going by G1 continuity, it was the original Transformers who rebelled against the Quintessons who created them to like to establish Cybertron as its own independent world. And I don't know if they're going. Well, no, they have established Primus is the one who created them, but I don't know if they're saying that the Quintessons created the planet Cybertron. I guess we'll find out in whatever the next one is, or maybe they are two separate entities. But I'm just thinking at it from the G1 aspect of things because they're definitely leaning heavily into a lot of G1 with this. Obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not terribly important, but I thought it was interesting when they go to the surface, and I was like, this surface is weird. Why is there like organic matter on the surface? This is really interesting. And then I realized, oh, it's because the surface is dominated by the Quintessons.
Yeah, and that actually kind of answers a question that I posed a couple of weeks ago, like not on camera or anything, just in our chats. I was like, are the Quintessons organic, techno-organic, or do they just have that weird aesthetic? And that kind of answered it for me. I think they are techno-organic, and that kind of plays into that. So, in this continuity, at least.
Yeah, so that was interesting. But, like, I guess to kind of sum up my thoughts on the story of TF1, I have never been rooting for Megatron so hard in my life.
I loved how he's just repeatedly punching Starscream in the face, and then suddenly his arm cannon materializes. And
yeah, I think from a writing standpoint, this was the most well-written Megatron I think we maybe have ever had, outside of like some niche instances in the comics.
Yeah, and this is obviously based on the comics too, because I don't remember which continuity it was, just because there's so many I can't keep track of them all. One of them, he was a minor, and he did write a anti-classist manifesto that got popular with the working class, and the Senate tried to have him assassinated for it. And it was in that caste system, it was your alt mode determines what role you have in Cybertronian society. Whereas in this one, it's we'll take away your transformation cog, you're inferior to us. You're just a scrap worker, that kind of thing. And that is like one of the scummiest things I've ever seen. Then when they found Alpha Trion, he's like, no Cybertronian is born without a transformation cog. What are you talking about? Sentinel Prime? Oh no, friends, no. He is no Prime.
Yeah,
I thought it was hilarious when they found him, and in order to revive him, they stuck the Enertron cube in his mouth. I thought it was a little silly, but it's on brand. It makes sense.
Yeah, and Alpha Trion is voiced by Lawrence Fishburne, which is really cool.
Yes.
But I want to go on a bit of a tangent here.
Yeah.
So bear with me. Like I said, D16 or Megatron, most well written he's ever been outside of some comics instances. This is a great representation of what it is like for someone to be like radicalized by an idea, to be like pushed to their absolute limit, and to watch somebody progressively get like radicalized by being betrayed. It is so believable. And like, again, you have the idea of Ryan Pax and D16 and the other characters that had the truth revealed to them. They both had the same things happen to them and walked away with different conclusions. And so it's very much a story about how do you deal with trauma, how do you deal with rising up from being oppressed and like realizing that you were being taken advantage of, because the D16 hatred towards Sentinel is completely justified.
It is, and
perfectly justified. He's like I was literally indoctrinated into slave labor from birth.
And he was thinking to himself, I followed all the rules. I was told, like, Elita is over here working her way up to like shift lead or whatever at the various jobs she had to work. And they thought, yeah, we're not going to be as good as the ones who have transformation cogs, but maybe we can make the best out of what we have. And then it turns out it's all a lie, and they didn't have to be in that position in the first place. And D16 didn't really have any higher aspirations other than just work your 9 to 5, take value in your hard day's work, and know that you're contributing to society to make a better place, because, the world wouldn't be where it is without the blue-collar workers. We're the guys who really make the world go round. We don't need the glory. The hard work is the satisfaction enough. Whereas Orion Pax actually had we are better than this. We have potential to be bigger than this. I have dreams. I'm willing to take risks. But D16 is like, you're gonna mess this up for us. And so that's why when it all came crashing down, Orion wasn't hit as hard. And he's like, I always knew. Where D16 is like, my entire reality has been shattered. Everything I thought I knew is a lie, and I want blood.
But here's the thing, and it's like with any older franchise or something based off of 80s cartoons to sell toys or whatever, it's like it's hard to have villains that are not just cartoonishly evil just for the sake of it.
Yeah.
And so giving Megatron a motivation that feels relatable and believable, and having like a real motivation for him to do what he does instead of him just being evil for the sake of it, is like something I have almost never seen Transformers do. Because whether it's G1 or the Bayverse or like even like animated, like a lot of times Megatron is just evil to be evil. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And I was, and maybe this is a little bit like, maybe this is a little bit messed up for me, but like the fact that I was like grinning from ear to ear as he literally rips Sentinel in half, I was like, no,
he deserved it.
Dude.
He
like,
deserved it.
On Megatron, like
it's also a thing of, we know he's going to be the villain, but the most compelling and best villains, in my opinion, are the ones that you can root for to be the villain, for the hero to overcome. Like, you want to have a good obstacle for your hero to rise up against.
Yeah.
But it's also a thing of, in this case, the villain actually was completely justified, and you're happy with both of them. You just hate that they can't come to the same conclusion. You hate that they can't be friends anymore.
Their conflict is absolutely heartbreaking, and I can't wait for all of the gay fan fiction to where it's like...
I mean, it already exists.
I can't wait for all the gay fan fiction, all the enemies to lovers thing, because this is one of those like rivalries that would be solved if they just made out already. I'm sure Bree shares that same sentiment.
Here we go.
Like, I can't believe their like homoerotic tension of like, they go to the race and like D16 is like, you did this for me, and Orion Pack's like, no bro, I did this for us. And I'm like, that's so good. And just to see all that fall apart, because again, D16's radicalization pipeline was like, he was betrayed, he was angry, and then he gets his first taste of power when he realizes, like, he's mouthing off to Starscream, and he's like, wait, I'm stronger than this guy. I can kick this guy's ass.
Breaks his voice box, and I wish that Starscream's voice had stayed broken through the rest of the movie, just to make it, like... I'm not going to call it... Not, like, at the end, his voice sounded, like, back to normal. Like, I know that it was broken, like, during the scene with Sentinel, but when the Decepticons were, like, leaving Iacon, it sounded like it was back to normal. Sideways asks, TF1 Orion Pax versus G1 versus Align Continuity. I'm not familiar with the Align Continuity Orion Pax, but G1 Orion Pax, like, from the cartoon, didn't really have that much to him outside of the, like, one episode we saw. So...
I can also kind of think of like TF1 Orion Pax to G1 Optimus Prime are like a linear timeline almost.
Yeah, and then TF1 versus TF86. I'm gonna need to watch TF1 a few more times. I don't know if it touches the original 86 film, but the 86 film also had 2 years worth of cartoon preceding it for you to get attached to these characters. But again, if you wanted to, you could just watch TF1 and go right to TF86 and have effectively a very similar experience.
I think TF86 is also a product of its time, so I don't think that it's really fair to compare the two, because it's not really going to hold up under scrutiny compared to the current modern movie. But anyway,
hello there, Sir Isaac. Welcome to the chat.
Yeah. So yeah, like Megatron gets it, or D16 gets his first taste of power when he realizes he's stronger than Starscream, and he gets that big fuck off fusion cannon that pops out of his arm, and he's like, oh wait, I'm really powerful. And I now have a deep disdain for anybody who calls themselves my superior. He's like, I will not listen to anyone who calls themselves my leader. He's like, no one is fit to tell me what to do other than me. And again, considering the context of what he's been through, perfectly relatable. Like, holy shit. And the moment where you see the subtlety in like his eyes changing color. I guess that's not really that subtle when I really think about it, but you see like the change of his eye color, and the moment where he finally like becomes Megatron, and
It's
it
like
is
Orion Pax gets in the way of him exacting his revenge on Sentinel, takes the blast, grabs him as he's falling over the edge, and he has a moment where he's hesitating, but he's like, "I'm done saving you." He's like,
exactly
"You are
yeah.
my
He's
friend, but you are being a hindrance. You are not allowing us to rise up and actually take what's rightfully ours. You are in our way. I am done with you.
well,
Goodbye."
he's more like every single time you get involved in my life has gotten worse. And so like he has this he's like I have gone too far. There is nothing, there's no going back for me.
I
There's nothing that can be done that can redeem me.
He's like, "I've
I
effectively just
just need
overthrown the government
to
single-handedly."
Yeah, I need to embrace becoming the bad guy now, and that includes letting you go. And that is like that moment of like, but it's also like a bit of a karma thing because again, Primus then chooses Orion Pax to become Optimus Prime, and it's like Megatron made Prime
He did,
in this situation. Like
and in G1.
he yeah, he created Optimus Prime as a result of his actions. And so like Optimus always being there to be this thorn in his side and stop him at every turn is his karma for letting his rage take control of him. And again, like even from the perspective of like the Cybertronian High Guards, the characters that later go on to become the rest of the Decepticons, your Soundwave, your Shockwave, your Starscream, your Seekers, all of them are pretty justified in wanting to follow Megatron's lead because they're like, again, we don't trust the Primes. Like anyone who has called themselves Prime has led us to die, and so whereas we have this person that has this like bitter hatred for the status quo, and you know it makes more sense to follow somebody. And if all that they respect is the might of one bot over another, then Megatron will happily maintain that status quo by just being stronger and faster than whoever tries to oppose him. And so it's like his little, gang, so to speak, of the Decepticons. It makes sense. Like they're not just evil for being the sake of it. They have a believable motivation. And then again, of course, with Optimus, it's like, he does kind of chastise Megatron for being like, hey, it didn't have to end this way. Like you didn't have to do this. Now that you've done it, you're gonna get punished for it. I can't save you from what's about to happen to you. And just know you brought this on yourself. Like I feel the same pain that you feel, the same pain of betrayal, but we could have worked through this together, and that's what's just so tragic about it. And I'm sure that's some of the emotional payoff that you had from this as well, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, because again, everything Megatron did up to that point of like taking down Sentinel was 100% justified, and depending on how he carried it out, it could have been for the betterment of everyone. But the moment that he took Megatronus Prime's transformation cog, firstly, I didn't care for the Tri-Blaster he got. I missed the fusion cannon. I think they changed that at the end of the movie, though. But it was the thing of he got too powerful. He got too much of a power rush, and he said, anyone who followed Sentinel Prime is now dead. We are going to destroy Iacon. He got too caught up in the moment. It would have been just enough to just end Sentinel. Like, I'm sure that there are others like Darkwing who would have fought back because Darkwing loved being, like, in his thoughts, superior to the Cogless. But that also does still leave the problem of there's still no Matrix. The Energon still doesn't flow. So there's still going to need to be basically a slave workforce in order to keep Cybertron going because of this deal that he made with the Quintessons. Oh yeah, they also got to deal with the Quintessons now too. So it was one of those things to where Megatron was justified in what he did, but it wasn't for the greater good. Like, it was absolutely a personal vendetta, even though it's hard to say that it wasn't justified. But Prime did need, or Orion Pax before he became Prime was like, no, we need to get this done for everyone. We need to actually give everyone their cogs back because they exist somewhere. We just got to find them. He didn't outright say that, but that's what he's thinking.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I'm still just in my head, just I keep going through the plot over and over again in my head. I just love the character arc of D16. The D16 to Megatron pipeline in this movie is just incredible. And again, I said I didn't like that they went with like an A-list celebrity cast with the voice actors here. I would have liked them to have proper voice actors for this movie.
Yeah.
Chris Hemsworth does do a good job as Ryan Pax, and again, he does change up his vocal cadence when he becomes Optimus Prime a little bit, and it works out. And like Alita 1 is voiced by Scarlett Johansson. I'm whatever about that. Alpha Trion being played by Lawrence Fishburne is cool. And then Starscream is voiced by Steve Buscemi, which is so funny to me. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This is actually perfect casting. And but the guy that voices Megatron, phenomenal job. Like there's so many moments where you can just feel the pain in his voice, and I'm like, bro is selling this performance. I am here for this. And again, it's like his delivery becomes a little bit more intense and a little bit more gruff and mean as his like the pipeline to Megatron continues.
Sideways says because he got Megatronus's transformation cog, is he going to be a triple changer? He took out the one that he got from Alpha Trion. I don't remember who he said he gave him, but he only has one T cog. But if Megatronus was a triple changer, then maybe. But it looked to me like Megatron still had the same like tank mode transformation, just bigger and beefier.
Yeah.
Yeah. I gotta say, that is one of my favorite moments from the fight scene. He whips down the cannon to fire at Prime. Prime rips it off his back, smacks him with it, but then Megatron reattaches it when it collides, and then whips it back around and shoots him with it while he's in robot mode. The fight scene there at the end was absolutely fantastic.
Oh yeah, it was so fucking cool, and it just goes to show like how much more powerful the two of them are now in these forms.
Oh yeah.
And like it's a little bit. Man, it was so fucking cool. Just seeing like the little ball of energon come out of Prime's hand and it becomes the axe, and it gets like the face shield that comes down finally, like the signature face shield.
The fact that he can spin the axe and like shoot sonic booms out of it.
Yeah, just so cool.
I did also notice when Orion first showed up to rescue Megatron from Sentinel, we see him like grab the blaster and do the air jump like he did in the original movie. Like
yeah,
that was
yeah. And like again, this movie is not like it's not so fan pandering that it's like stuck as nostalgia bait. It is very accessible for newcomers. But to the degree that it does have like fan pandering and nostalgia bait, there are a lot of really cool references. We already mentioned all the background characters. I love when Alita 1 says to
you don't have the
Ryan,
touch or the
she's
power.
like, yeah, you don't have the touch or the power. That took me a second, but I was like, that's pretty funny. You got me there. And then during the race, the leaderboard during the race, every single
All
name
the
on that
names.
leaderboard is a named character.
I saw Blur in there. I absolutely saw Blur.
I saw Scattershot and Jetstorm, and I was like, I know who these characters are. Some of these are really obscure characters.
Crap! I can't take the turret with me here. I need my double jump. Sir Isaac is completely lost on what we're talking about. Yeah. Sir Isaac has established on a couple of our previous streams that he knows next to nothing about Transformers, but that's perfectly fine. We're so glad you're sticking around the chat. And Megatron just kicked me off a ledge.
Go watch Transformers 1. Go see it in the theater right now. It's really fucking good.
It is very accessible to those who have never seen it before. It gives you... it doesn't bog you down with, like, deep Transformers lore. It's got good brownie points for the... it's got good, like, eye candy for the fans, but it also is very accessible to newcomers in the audience if you're interested. But yeah. I do remember you mentioning you're not huge into like mecha or robots or anything like that, so it might be out of your wheelhouse. But it is still a fun romp at least once.
Well, my wife is not a mecha fan and really doesn't care anything about Transformers either. But she's really excited to see this with me when we go back to see it again.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think my only other complaint about this movie before we end here is that I didn't really like Bumblebee that much.
Oh, you mean Badassatron?
Yeah, and I'm like, there were some funny moments. I love how when he figures out he has knife hands,
I see that.
And he's like, "Look, I have knife hands." And Prime was like, "I can see that." And he's like, "I'm gonna go cut these guys." The room just busted out laughing at that. And then the next scene is he is just going completely goblin mode
Yes.
and is like, "I'm gonna go terrorize some random office workers."
Well,
And he like
yo,
puts their door down and destroys their desk and everything. And I'm like, he is just a total gremlin right now. That part was funny, but I didn't
it
like how he had like 3 or 4 jokes that they
just kept hammering.
yeah, we're just okay, kid. If it feels like this like post Minions era of animation of
Yeah.
like, hey, the kids laughed at the one joke, let's now do that joke like 5 or 6 times in a row to keep the kids laughing. And I'm
But
like, it was funny the first time, please stop repeating it.
yeah, well, like when Elita One told you to be quiet, you should have stopped it. Like you could have had the Badassatron joke once more, but after that, nah. But
Yeah, very unfunny after being repeated that many times.
I will say, like him just being a nonstop chatterbox. I just got completely destroyed somehow. All right. I will say him being a chatterbox makes sense because how many movies has it been since he lost his voice box? He's got some making up to do.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So
But,
I'll grant him that. I'm not gonna be too
and
bad
again,
about him.
there
But
were some moments, like I said, where the knife hands thing that was legitimately really funny.
oh
I just
yeah.
wish that like, from comedy standpoint, like if you have a good joke, tell it one time and please move on. Like,
Just
oh my god.
the only thing I could think of with that scene when he had the wrist blades is like the scene in War for Cybertron after you fight Starscream in the Autobot campaign when Bumblebee is shouting at him, "Come back here, you yellow plated so and so." He's like angrily
Yeah.
shaking his little short sword at him while he's flying away. Johnny Young Botch was a fantastic Bumblebee. I wish he'd come back.
Yeah, he sure was. The whole voice cast of War for Cybertron is incredible.
Yeah.
It's probably my favorite voice cast of anything Transformers.
Yeah, it's like I said it before, at least to you. The guy who did Megatron, he's no Frank Welker, but he is still a fantastic Megatron.
Yeah, I got to see him at Dragon Con actually.
Yes.
The voice of Megatron in this game.
Yeah,
But,
Bree equates the moment when Bumblebee kicked in the door of the office to like Toph on the Fire Nation ship during the last leg of Avatar, when she just busts in there with the metal bending.
yeah,
Just, hey, you're not supposed to be in here.
just absolute gremlin behavior, and I'm here for it. But yeah, yeah, Sideways saying on their second viewing of TF1, they noticed that Zeta Prime has the same axe that Optimus does. That's pretty cool.
Huh? I didn't catch that. I only thing I noticed was the Thanos sword.
No, not Frank Welker, but Fred Tatasciore, or whatever how you pronounce his last name, the voice of Megatron in War for Cybertron, not the G1 Megatron, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, I noticed. So I mentioned earlier, one of the primes is Vector Prime from Transformers Cybertron.
Yeah.
And his design in this movie is faithful to Cybertron, but he doesn't have a single speaking line, and of course he dies off screen like the rest of the primes do.
Yeah.
Also, Alpha Trion having a beast mode is pretty fucking cool.
I wasn't expecting that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Also, with what, Arachne or whatever her name was?
Arachnid, yes. I think she's from Transformers Prime. Or
yeah, I wanted Megatron to get the kill on her, honestly.
She's still alive as far as I can tell. But yeah.
I wanted Megatron to finish her off.
Yeah, Bree did mention that she appreciated how the fight between Elita 1 and Arachnid was tastefully done instead of how in a lot of action movies you basically get the girls together for a cat fight and it's just kind of gratuitous. But
Yeah.
she said that was actually very well put together. And Arachnid's transformation was very well implemented. Her legs turn into like a gyro spinner, and she used it as a
really
shield
cool
to block oncoming attacks. And I'm like, this is how you animate Transformers.
Yeah, well, she's also a triple changer, isn't she?
I'm not certain. I think she's probably going to become a spider at some point later, but I don't.
Maybe I just assumed that she was a spider based on the design.
She is in other continuities, and she probably will become one later. Like, I'm already thinking about if TF1 does get a sequel, I'm already thinking about what they can do with it. Like, we're going to have Starscream try to overthrow Megatron. We're going to have well, what else have we got? The rest of the Autobots actually making their big debut as Transformers now that they have cogs. We're
Yeah, I don't
Megatron.
even think
Megatron's going
I
to
don't
have to
even think
destroy the
this
core of
movie needs a
Cybertron.
sequel, but if they make one, I would love to see it for sure.
Yeah. And I will say, because the Matrix is what causes energon to flow freely throughout Cybertron, that means that in order for the war to continue and there to be the energy crisis there is in basically every continuity that I'm aware of, it's going to have to be the Megatron probably corrupts the core of Primus with dark energon like he does in War for Cybertron. This is basically
Yeah,
giving us like kind of another version of War for Cybertron.
yeah.
And I'm here for it. I am absolutely here for it. Like, this is the most excited I've been at a movie in years.
Well, on that note,
Things
I
about
think I'm
time.
gonna have to jump off. I'm having company over very shortly, but this was an awesome, almost 4 hours.
Yeah, I think this
Um,
is the longest live stream I've ever done. I typically try to cap it around
yeah,
two and a half.
it's definitely one of the longest ones I've done in a very long
Yeah,
time.
I
But
will
yeah,
definitely send you the Audacity recording I have of this and the VOD after I get it downloaded. You can use that for your edited version of the video on your channel. I'm probably gonna
okay.
go until I finish this level, just because. Well, I mean, I'm already in the level. Might as well finish it out and just hang out with my buds here in the chat.
All right, doorbell's ringing. I'll catch you guys later.
All right, later, bro. Peace.
Bye bye.
All right, gonna take a second to go ahead and pause my Audacity recording and stop. All right, that's going, and now we can go ahead and turn the volume back up on this. Hopefully it comes through a little bit. I kept it muted just so it wouldn't drown out the talk, and because for some reason, even though it's running through my Elgato capture card, the audio for this is coming through the desktop, which is where the Discord call is coming from. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. Oh, hello. And I'm dead. Go ahead and grab this health up on here. So, how's everyone else doing today? Oh yeah, he's always a lot of fun. I'm kind of sad that I'm not going to get to see him at AWA this year, but, you know, it's a little too close to Christmas to go to that, so it is what it is. Pick up these grenades. Let's go. Oh, wait. Is that the turret I just dropped? Yeah, I think it is. Don't have any more ammo. Favorite dinosaur movies? It's been a while since I watched any of the Land Before Times, and I don't think I've seen any of the Jurassic Parks all the way down. If we're not including Transformers because they include Dinobots, let me see. In the news, found out that works perfectly on your laptop. No glitchy textures. Excellent. Always good. Yeah, I couldn't get the couldn't quite get the PSP emulator to work on mine, so that's why I went with the Steam Deck. All right. So current goal right here is to get to the core of Cybertron so we can corrupt it with Dark Energon. That's in the next mission, though. We just have to get there, and we have a little boss fight with Omega Supreme at the end, and then the next stage is just a two-phase boss fight. So we're just gonna get to the end of this mission, then we'll call it quits, because again, we've been going for nearly 4 hours over here. Got him. Yeah, I did watch that one years and years ago, but I remember next to nothing about it. What? Wait. Hold on. Where did the screen go? Okay, it's delivering the charge, but why is it not connecting to the Elgato? One moment. Well, having trouble getting my Steam Deck to connect back to the Elgato, so I guess I might as well call it right there, since the primary purpose of this stream was just to chat about Transformers. Well, thank you all for coming out and watching this whole big 4-hour long chat. But me and Rio will be back with another stream. I think we're going to try for Wednesday. We'll be continuing with the Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you then. Peace out.